So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was a red sun god and Awkens Kryptonian power. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. On the planet Earth, the world was home to the human race but soon became home to another species that would make a huge impact. In the town of Smallville, as the name implies, it was a small town so nothing too exciting happened. It was a very modest farming town. Crops of corn could be seen for miles and the people were very nice and hospitable, like many rural towns. The only thing of excitement that was happening was the Smallville High School homecoming football game. In the town, one couple, Jonathan and Martha Kent, were in town for some chores. They walked into the local florist shop to see a young 3-year-old girl wearing a princess costume and holding a wand. Afternoon, Nell. Jonathan said as Nell Potter, owner of the store and aunt to the Lana Lang, turned around to see the Kents. Jonathan. Martha. What a surprise. What brings the reclusive Kents to town? Nell asked. Tulips. Red ones, if you have them, Martha said. What about a tiger orchid? Nell asked. No thanks. Martha has her heart set on tulips, Jonathan said. Yes, well they are an uncomplicated flower, Nell said as Martha rolled her eyes and saw Lana. That is a beautiful dress, Lana. Are you a princess? Martha asked as she kneeled down. I'm a fairy princess, Lana replied. Hey, where are her parents? Jonathan asked. Oh, they're at the homecoming game with everyone else. I'm being the good aunt, Nell said. Do you want to make a wish? Lana asked Martha. I would love to make a wish, Martha said. Okay. Abracadabra, Lana said as she touched her wand onto Martha's head. After they left the flower store, Jonathan got some feed while Martha sat in the truck with a look on her face that Jonathan recognized. I know what you wished for, Jonathan said. I see a little face. It's all I ever wanted, Martha said as Jonathan leaned over and kissed her and they heard people cheering and car horns honking. Hey, looks like Smallville won again, Jonathan said with a smile as the team and parents cheered. Jonathan then drove back to the farm, but after about 10 minutes, something happened. Meteors fell to the town as people screamed and ran for cover. Cars, buildings and fields were hit as some people were killed by the meteor impacts. What's happening, Jonathan? Martha yelled as a meteor hit the road and Jonathan tried to brake but the pickup crashed off the road. The truck was flipped over as Jonathan and Martha were sore but alive. Jonathan then saw something he couldn't believe. Martha, Jonathan said, getting her attention, and she saw 2 young boys squatting by the truck. One was about 3 years old, black hair and blue eyes and was naked. The other was about 4, had spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, and 6 whisker marks on his face, but was wearing clothes that were a little too small for his size. Jonathan and Martha got out of the truck and followed the trail in the ground left by the meteor. Martha was carrying the naked boy wrapped in a blanket they had in the truck while Jonathan was carrying the other. Kids just don't fall out of the sky, Martha, Jonathan said. Then where did they come from? Martha asked. I don't know, but they must have parents, Jonathan said as they saw the vessel that carried the both of them in the dirt. Well, if they do, they're definitely not from Kansas, Martha said. Sweetheart, we can't keep them. What are we going to tell people? We found them out in a field, Jonathan asked. We didn't find them. They found us, Martha said. Line break XXXXX time had passed since the arrival of 2 small boys in a cornfield in Smallville, Kansas. Those 2 boys were Naruto and Clark Kent, the adopted sons of Jonathan and Martha Kent. They grew up normal boys but knew they were different, born with special powers that no one else had. Their parents did their best to raise them with important values and that their powers were to be used for good and to help people, but they should be careful about who knows about their powers. Their childhood and adolescence was interesting to say the least, between meteorite-infected teenagers who developed strange abilities, to the growing realization and discovery of their alien heritage. The 2 boys quickly learned as much as they could. Their powers grew and they discovered new abilities like heat vision, super breath and X-ray vision. They managed to make some friends who knew their secret, like Chloe Sullivan, Pete Ross and Lana Lang. Clark and Naruto had a habit of saving them often from the crypto villains that popped up every now and then during their high school years. Some really weird ones too, Like Bug Boy or the dichotic multiplier who tried to go out with Lana and Chloe at the same time. Eventually, life kept on going and their paths crossed with Jor-El and Minato, Clark and Naruto's biological fathers. They discovered that they weren't biological brothers but their fathers were very close along with Jor-El's brother, Zor-El. When Krypton was on the verge of destruction, they put the plan to send their children to Earth to ensure the survival of their race. They put them on the path to the crystals of knowledge that created the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole. They said that Naruto and Clark were sent to Earth to protect mankind and to save them from the Earth's ultimate destruction. Well, they could have been more specific about that last part. Soon, tragedy struck and Jonathan Kent was killed due to a heart attack. His heart gave out just as Naruto and Clark finished college. Naruto and Clark felt responsible because they knew Jonathan developed heart problems after he made a deal with Jor-El to bring Clark back after his summer on Red Kryptonite. Clark had left for Metropolis after an incident with his parents. He destroyed the ship that carried him and Naruto to Earth because he didn't want to accept the destiny Jor-El had in place for him. He managed to destroy the ship with kryptonite but the shockwave put Naruto into a coma and caused their mother to have complications with her coming baby and the baby died. Clark felt responsible so he left and Jonathan was given powers to bring him back but they took a toll on his human body. This was a very difficult moment for the two brothers as both left on their own journeys to sort through their emotions and to get some space. Clark went on his path while Naruto went on his own. Last Naruto had heard from him, Clark was supposed to be working on some fishing boat in Alaska. Naruto, well, he had traveled the world for a bit to see what was out there. Helped to be able to fly. 2013 Naruto now was 28 years old and he was currently in Central City. Naruto was working for the Random House Books publishing company and was on a business trip doing some business with the Central City news station and the publishing company's location in the city on the new books being released. Naruto enjoyed it, it was fun work and it allowed him to keep a roof over his head. He was going to be in Central City for a few more days and then head back to Smallville. Naruto just finished with a meeting and was going to get some coffee from Jitters. Naruto walked into the store and stood in line for his coffee. He had grown since being a little kid and now stood at an impressive 6 cubic feet, tall and muscular. His spiky blonde hair had grown out and his whisker birthmarks had faded so they were almost gone. He was currently wearing a red t-shirt, dark blue jeans, sneakers and a black button-up. He stood in line and looked at the TV that was playing the local news about the unveiling of the Star Labs particle accelerator tonight. "Can I help? Who's next?" the barista said as Naruto walked up and the girl barista blushed. "What can I get you?" Well, Naruto said as he looked at her name tag. "Iris West." "Iris. What's the house specialty?" Well, we've got a very special 2 coffee blend with cream and you'll want 3. Iris joked as Naruto chuckled. "I'll take 1, please," Naruto said as Iris smiled. "Coming right up," Iris said as she got his drink and Naruto took out some money. Iris then came back with his order. "Here you go." "Thank you," Naruto said as he paid her and tipped her nicely. Naruto left with his coffee and saw her phone number written on it as well. Naruto chuckled as he took a sip and walked out of Jitters and took a walk. As he was walking, he got a call from his cell and saw it was his mom. "Hey, Mom," Naruto said as he took a sip of coffee. "So, how's the farm? Shelby giving you any trouble?" "No, she's fine. She misses you and Clark though," Martha said as Naruto nodded. "Don't worry. When I finish up in Central City, I'm coming home. Have you heard from Clark?" Naruto asked. "Yes, he's actually on his way home. Apparently he left his job in Alaska after the oil rig incident," Martha said. "Oh, that was him. I heard about that. The people rescued from the oil rig said that someone stopped a collapsing rig from crushing them. Clark should be a bit more discreet," Naruto said as he took a sip of coffee. "Well, you're not so better yourself, young man. Remember the footage of the blur in Metropolis a year ago?" Martha said as Naruto cleared his throat. "I'll admit, Jimmy is a good photographer if he managed to catch me mid-rescue. So, have you heard from Kara?" Naruto asked. Kara Zor-El was Clark's biological cousin. Zor-El was Jor-El's brother and Kara was sent to Earth to look after Clark but when her ship left Krypton, it was caught in the destructive wave and sent her ship into the Phantom Zone. It wasn't until years later that her ship was set free somehow and arrived on Earth, but she remained an 11-year-old girl while Naruto was 18 and Clark was 17. To help Kara adjust and to aid her alibi of being Clark and Naruto's cousin, Kara stayed with the Danvers family. A family that worked for Virgil Swan before his death. Virgil Swan was an astrophysicist who had recorded and archived all the data the day that Naruto and Clark arrived on Earth. He had information on Krypton and translated the message their parents left them about using their powers to protect Earth. He then helped them however he could, with their new abilities and with any questions they could have on Krypton. He eventually passed away, but the Danvers family were people that Naruto and Clark trusted and worked with after Dr. Swan's death. Kara stayed with them to adjust to Earth and to help her control her powers. Yes, she's doing just fine in National City. I heard she just landed a part-time job working at Catco Media while she finishes college, Martha said. Well, she's going to need all the help she can get. I heard from Chloe that Cat Grant is ruthless and very hard to work for, Naruto said. Well, she'll be just fine. So how is Central City? Martha asked. It's okay. Busy and full of smart people. The particle accelerator is supposed to turn on tonight, so the city's full of geniuses wanting to see it work. I might go see it tonight, you never know. It might be nice to see something game-changing that doesn't have to do with kryptonite or Clark and I, Naruto said as Martha chuckled. Well, have fun, and I'll see you home in a few days, Martha said. Bye Mom. Love you, Naruto said as the call ended. Naruto spent the rest of the day walking around the city and enjoying some alone time. Naruto then made his way to Star Labs to watch the unveiling of the particle accelerator. Naruto stood in the crowd of people as Dr. Harrison Wells took to the podium to speak. Thank you. My name is Harrison Wells. Tonight, the future begins. The work my team and I will do here will change our understanding of physics, will bring about advancements in power, advancements in medicine. And trust me, that future will be here faster than you think. Harrison Wells said as everyone applauded. Naruto applauded but then stopped as his super hearing picked up some chatter. A thief stole a purse and someone chased after them. Naruto saw the thief leave the celebration, so he went to stop him. He saw the thief run away from Star Labs to one of the alleyways across the street and saw another guy chase after him. Naruto followed them and saw the thief knock the other guy on his ass. All right, kid, you don't have to do this, all right? Just give me back my friend's bag and we'll call it even, Barry said as the thief then sucker punched him in the gut and ran, but before he could turn to leave, Naruto super sped to him and knocked the thief against a fence and knocked him out. Naruto then left the purse on the ground and left. Barry blinked as he just saw a blur take the thief out and leave. He looked around to see no one except Iris run up to him. Naruto looked at them from the alley down the block and smiled. He decided to turn in for the night and left for his motel room. Naruto was laying in bed and eating some Big Belly burger while listening to some music. He was relaxing when all of a sudden, he heard a loud boom. He stood up and looked out his window to see a huge pillar of energy erupt and shoot up into the sky, and then a wave of energy spread out through Central City and the power cut out. Naruto quickly grabbed his jacket and super sped out of his room into the pouring rain and booming thunderstorm. He then flew into the sky and was heading straight towards the center of energy when he saw a bolt of lightning strike through the roof of a building. Naruto flew there first to check and see if anyone was hit. He flew through the hole in the window and saw the wreck of a lab with chemicals all over the floor and a man unconscious, probably hit by the lightning. Naruto went down to check on him and saw it was the guy he saved from the thief. Naruto listened for a heartbeat and still heard one, so he quickly grabbed the guy and flew him towards the nearest hospital. After dropping him off at the hospital, he quickly flew towards Star Labs to help people. He saved people from falling debris, and got people out of the lab buildings. He even saved Dr. Wells when his legs were caught under debris. After the event, word spread and people called it an unforeseen disaster. 23 people were killed because of the particle accelerator explosion and one person was in a coma. It would take a lot for the city to recover, but Naruto helped as much as he could until he wasn't needed anymore. Line break XXXXX. Naruto soon returned to Smallville after his business trip in Central City was over. His cab pulled up to the Kent farm and Naruto got out. He smiled as he saw his mom and Shelby planting some flowers and Clark working on the tractor. Shelby saw him and ran up to him as Naruto walked up to the house. Naruto smiled as he pet Shelby on the head as his mom and Clark smiled. Well, look at who has grown up. Martha shouted as Naruto smiled and hugged her as she hugged back. Good to see you too, Mom, Naruto said as he then hugged Clark. How have you been, Clark? Rescue any oil rig workers recently? Naruto asked as Clark chuckled. Well, what about you? Save any other scientists? Clark joked as Naruto chuckled. No more than usual, Naruto said as they walked in. Naruto put all his stuff away in his room and was about to go help Clark with the tractor when he saw a small box on his dresser. Naruto walked over and opened it to reveal a small metal item with a spiral-like sun on it, with a small string. It was Naruto's control key for his part of the fortress. When they got the crystals that formed the Fortress of Solitude, there were 2 key ports for Kryptonian house keys. Clark had one with his house symbol and Naruto had his. Even though the Fortress of Solitude was created years ago, neither one of them put their key in. Dr. Swan's last message before he died was that the Kryptonian keys would unlock the last part of their journey to protect the Earth and they should only activate them in the fortress when they were ready. Naruto took the key and put it around his neck and left to go help Clark with the tractor. Naruto replaced tractor while Clark fixed the engine. So, Clark, have you spoken to Chloe or Lois since you've been back? Naruto asked as Clark looked at him. No, not yet. I was gonna make a trip to Metropolis later. See how they're doing, Clark said as he finished tightening a bolt. You. Other than the occasional checkup from Lois or Chloe, I haven't seen them yet. You think they'll be angry? Naruto asked. I don't think so. They knew why we left, Clark said as Naruto nodded. Clark then noticed Naruto had his key. You have your key. Yeah, Naruto said as he held it. You'd think after all these years it'd be easier to hold, but I'm still afraid of it. Me too, Clark said. You think we're ready to finally embrace our destiny? Naruto asked as Clark put his tools away and took off his gloves. No, but then again, I'm not sure when I would feel ready, Clark said as he chuckled. You know, in high school, I would have never thought that we'd have to worry about this now. I know. We tried to go through high school as normal as possible and push back against our destiny, and look what happened, Naruto said as they remembered the events of the past. Clark's brief stint in Metropolis under the influence of red kryptonite, the brief time they were brainwashed, and when the second meteor shower came to Smallville. And now I wonder what will happen if we do go through with it, Clark said as Naruto nodded. It's a coin flip, but we do it together, Naruto said. We'll go to the fortress tomorrow after we head to Metropolis and mend some fences with Chloe, Clark said. And Lois, Naruto said. Right, Lois, Clark replied in a tone that suggested he didn't leave things in a good place with her. Look, I know about how you left things with her, but you're gonna have to face her sooner or later, Naruto said. Yeah, easy for you to say. You don't have to face Lois's wrath, Clark said. How mad could she be? Sure, you sort of fell off the grid even though you were technically dating, but come on. She knows why you left. At least you kept in contact with her, right? Naruto asked as Clark didn't respond. You didn't? Geez. I still kept in contact with her and Chloe. She's gonna eat you alive tomorrow. Thanks, Clark replied as Naruto left to go fix the irrigation ditch. The next day, Naruto and Clark helped their mom with whatever last-minute things she needed and then made their way to Metropolis. They super sped to Metropolis and were careful to stop in an alley with no cameras so no one saw them. They walked into the Daily Planet and to the main reporting floor where reporters were at their cubicles or running around the floor to flush out stories and reports. There were radios set up all over the room, tuned to broadcasts, and TVs with all the important news stations shown. Naruto and Clark exited the elevator and saw everyone was pretty busy working on some stories. The Daily Planet from Man of Steel. Wow, busy, Naruto said. Welcome to the world of journalism, Clark said. Your world. I gave up on writing for the Torch sophomore year, just helping with layouts. You were the reporter, Naruto said. I wouldn't really call what I did reporting, Clark said. You had some good articles in the Torch, Naruto said as they tried to find Chloe and saw her at her desk on the phone with her computer filled with dozens of photos of the disaster from the Central City Particle Accelerator explosion. Yes, I understand that FEMA doesn't advertise, but it's been 2 weeks since the Star Labs particle accelerator explosion, and the Daily Planet would like a comment on what FEMA and the government plans to do if there is fallout from the explosion. Chloe said as she twirled her pen around. Well, the Daily Planet is not like Central City News, and frankly, we're concerned over the huge response FEMA has taken about the explosion, and the people need to know the truth if people are in danger. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the follow-up. Chloe said as she hung up, still didn't say anything. Hard at work as ever, Chloe? Chloe heard as she turned and saw Naruto and Clark. Naruto, Clark, Chloe said as she got up and hugged Naruto as Naruto hugged back. It's so good to see you guys, again, Chloe said as she then hugged Chloe. It's good to see you, Chloe, Clark said. My good, I didn't think I'd ever see you guys again, Chloe said. Chloe, we weren't dead. We just needed some time, Naruto said. And I see you guys got it if you're back. Well, it's great to see you guys again. I can't tell you how boring it's been with you guys gone, Chloe said as she sorted through some papers on her desk. Work keeping you busy? Clark asked. You don't know the half of it. I'm not sure how much you guys have been keeping up with the news, but a lot of interesting stuff has happened in the past few years, Chloe said as she took some files and walked over to the circulation desk as Clark and Naruto followed her. I mean, not as interesting as finding out your two best friends are aliens from another planet, but interesting still. Really? Naruto asked. Yeah, I mean, it seems like ever since you guys took your time off, the world got a little weirder. Check this out, Chloe said as she dropped off files at the circulation desk and went to the file cabinet that held the old issues of the Planet. This is the paper from a year ago. She showed it to them and the headline read, Earthquake Devastates Starling City. A year ago, a 7.6 magnitude earthquake devastated part of Starling City, which is odd because Starling City isn't on any known fault line. And it was revealed that the earthquake was man-made by a guy named Malcolm Merlin, Chloe said. Yeah, CEO of Merlin Global Group, Clark said, which did business with Queen Industries, whose former CEO, Moira Queen, announced being complicit in the act and that Merlin was a psychotic archer. Chloe said as she then turned the page to show a police sketch of the Hood. And Starling City also has its own vigilante. The Hood? Naruto asked. Not very original or catchy, Clark said. Well, I heard from my sources from Starling City that the police are calling him the Arrow, and even some of the police might be working with him. Which is strange since he was a killer who liked to put arrows in people, but now he's stopping crimes and taking out killers, Chloe said. Great for Starling City, Clark said. And in Gotham City, they have their own vigilante as well. It started years ago as rumor, but it was confirmed 7 years ago on Christmas when the news finally got footage of him stopping some guy in clown makeup. Chloe said as she showed them the headline from that story. The Batman is real. The Bat of Gotham stops Mad Clown. The Bat of Gotham stops Mad Clown? Naruto said. I can't believe I just said that. The Batman is real. And apparently, he's got some serious toys to take down bad guys. I've done some digging of my own, discreetly, and I think I've narrowed down the possible list of who he is, Chloe said. Chloe, why are you telling us this? Clark asked as Chloe looked at them. Well, I just thought, I mean, don't you want to know what other heroes are out there? I figured, you guys coming back meant you guys were ready to go back to work, Chloe said. Work? Naruto asked. You know, like we did before you guys left. Finding crimes and locking up crypto villains, Chloe said. Chloe, we're back and we're ready to get back in the game. We appreciate all the work you've done, but do you want us to create a league or something? Naruto asked. I guess I just got a little carried away. It's just that, I kind of missed doing what we used to do. Back before you guys left. Stopping bad guys, solving crimes, made me feel like a superhero, and from the looks of it, you guys aren't alone in the world anymore, Chloe said. Besides, with you guys back, I'm sure I'll have some interesting things to write about. I heard some whispers about a lot of mysterious saves in Central City during the particle accelerator explosion by something that flew in the sky. Guilty as charged. Naruto sang our way back to a status quo. Step 1 was coming to see you, Clark said as Chloe smiled. And I'm glad, but I'm not the only one who missed you guys, Chloe said as they saw James Jimmy Olsen talking to one of the layout people. Jimmy Olsen from Supergirl TV show. Jimmy. Look who's back, Chloe said as Jimmy turned to see Naruto and Clark. Jimmy Olsen was a good friend that they first met during their years in college. When Chloe was interning at the Planet, She met Jimmy, who was working as a photojournalist intern back then. Naruto, Clark, good to see you guys, again, Jimmy said as he walked over and shook their hands. And it's James, Chloe, not Jimmy. Right. Chloe said. It's good to see you guys back. I heard you both took some time to travel, James said. Some time to clear out heads, but it's good to be back. And I see you've finally been made a full-time photojournalist. Congratulations, Clark said. Thanks. Perry couldn't resist my photos. So, Clark, you thinking of working here at the planet now that you're back? Chloe said. You're a good reporter, James said as Chloe smiled. We'll see. Have you guys seen Lois? Clark asked as they nodded and pointed to the cubicle near Perry White's office. Lois was on the phone and working on a story as Clark cleared his throat and got nervous. Clark then took a deep breath and walked over to her. How much you guys want to bet she's really angry? Naruto asked. $10 says she slaps him. Chloe said. Deal. James said as they watched. They saw Clark walk over to Lois's desk and get her attention. They saw Lois turn and see Clark with a look of shock, happiness and anger. She stood up as Clark spoke to her and Lois then walked up to him and slapped him in the face. Everyone in the office was silent as they just saw Lois slap Clark and then walk away. Oh, that'll leave a mark, James said as he took out $10 and paid Chloe. Thank you. Clark will have a lot of work to get back into Lois's good graces, Chloe said as James left to the picture room to check on his photos. So, if step 1 of getting back in the game was coming to see your friends, what's step 2? Buy yourself a costume and patrol the city? Not exactly. Step 2 is to get some more answers, Naruto said as he took his command key out from under his shirt and Chloe knew what he meant. Wow, you guys think you're ready for that? I mean, the closest thing you guys have done to accepting your Kryptonian heritage was creating the fortress. Are you ready for whatever else is in there? Chloe asked. Maybe. Frankly, after hearing Jor-El's and my biological father's disembodied voice from an ancient Native American cave with vague statements about destiny, I want to know exactly what I'm supposed to do, Naruto said as Chloe nodded. Well, I think you already know the answer to that. You've been doing it since freshman year of high school. Saving people. But maybe, you're ready to do it on a global scale, Chloe said. Although, you might want to think about wearing a mask. Yeah, like that's gonna happen, Naruto said. I'm serious. If you leave your face exposed, people will recognize you and put 2 and 2 together. If not a mask, then you will have to change your appearance when you're in costume, or would you rather change how you are out of costume? Chloe asked. Wow, both are such great options, Naruto said sarcastically. Well, no one said being a superhero was gonna be easy, but I'm here to help should you need it, Chloe said. Thanks, Chloe, Naruto said as Chloe smiled. What are best friends for? Chloe replied. Line break XXXXX. After Lois slapped Clark, Naruto casually introduced himself and got a warmer welcome than Clark because he had kept in touch. Clark still had a lot of work to do to be in good terms with Lois. Naruto believed they broke up, although Lois wasn't exactly good with relationships and labels. Clark managed to get to a place where Lois would talk to him without slapping him. Now that they had said their hellos with the people they needed to, they flew towards the Arctic and to the Fortress of Solitude. They landed near the entrance to the fortress, which had a giant wall of ice blocking it. Naruto walked towards the wall and pressed his hand on it, and the spot where he touched glowed. The wall then came down and Clark and Naruto entered the fortress. They walked into the middle of the fortress where 2 crystal podiums were located with small indents that would fit a command key. Naruto and Clark walked forward and each stood in front of a podium and looked at each other. Ready? Naruto asked. Ready, Clark said as they took off their command keys and placed them near the slots and inserted the keys. The fortress hummed and rumbled as 2 walls of the fortress shook and the Kryptonian symbol from their keys were burned onto the walls, the S for Clark and spiral like sun for Naruto. Then the crystal walls with the symbols retracted into the floor to reveal 2 new areas of the fortress. Along with the 2 new areas, the floor moved apart and new strange-looking computers and screens appeared and decorated the fortress. Good luck, Naruto said as he walked into his section of the fortress and Clark walked into his. Naruto walked into his side and saw the walls of the fortress begin to rearrange, and then a wall came down and a small robot appeared before Naruto. Greeting, Null Auto. I am NC 967, your personal assistance drone. I will help run and maintain the fortress. Should you need anything, all you must do is ask, the drone said. How come this is the first time I'm seeing you? Naruto asked. When you and Kal-El gathered the crystals of knowledge and created the fortress, we were put in standby mode until your command keys were inserted. Then we were brought online. We shall help you in whatever manner you need. The drone replied as he left to go check on the other parts of the fortress. Naruto then turned around and saw a man who looked a lot like Naruto but much older. He was wearing some kind of weird robe outfit with the same sun figure from Naruto's key on the chest. If only Kushina could see you now. Seeing you there grown into an adult, the man said. Who are you? Naruto asked. I am your father, Naruto. My name is Minato, Minato said. So this is what you look like. Frankly, after hearing your disembodied voice in the cave I didn't know what you looked like, Naruto said. I am his memory, his consciousness. I was brought out when you placed your command key within the fortress, Minato said. I am programmed with all his memories and knowledge within the fortress. Knowledge of over 10,000 worlds. I have so many questions. Why did you send Clark and I to Earth? What happened to Krypton? Naruto asked. You and Kal-El came from Krypton, a planet with a much harsher environment and gravity than Earth's. Minato said as the holographic image of Krypton appeared. Long ago, in an era of expansion, our race encountered and gathered information on hundreds of planets and encountered different alien races. Krypton acted as a central hub for the galaxy. Krypton's technology advanced at an extraordinary rate and soon began to act as peacekeepers throughout the galaxy, arresting criminals and keeping the peace. We helped establish colonies on distant planets and expanded our race. For 100,000 years, Krypton was at peace. Then what happened? Naruto asked. Civil war erupted on Krypton. A large rebel group rebelled against the ruling council of Krypton. War ravaged Krypton, killing millions. With war, our resources were diminished and the colonies perished, Minato said. How could that happen? Naruto asked. Despite how advanced Krypton was, it wasn't perfect. It's not that much different from Earth, in some respects. Civil war ravaged Krypton, despite the best attempts made to keep the peace. Myself, Jor-El and Zor-El did our best but sadly it wasn't enough. The Council of Krypton was adamant to stay in power and exhausted our resources. As a result, our planet's core became unstable. Eventually, Krypton's military leader, Generup to take power from the Council. But by then it was too late. Jor-El, Zor-El and I foresaw the eventual destruction of Krypton, and we took steps to ensure your survival. Minato said as he and Naruto walked through the fortress as the fortress showed holographic recreations of Krypton's final moments. Surely, Clark, Kara and I can't be the only ones alive. There were 2 other Kryptonians we encountered. Granted they were homicidal, but there has to be more of us, Naruto said as Minato nodded. We only sent the 3 of you to Earth. Other Kryptonians are locked in the Phantom Zone but it is possible, Minato said. How come you didn't come with us? Naruto asked as Minato exhaled. We couldn't, Null. No matter how much we wanted to. No matter how much we loved you. Your mother and I were a product of the failures of a world as much as Zod was, tied to its fate. We did not want that for you. You are as much a child of Earth as you are of Krypton's. You can help embody the best of both worlds. A dream your mother and I died to preserve, Minato said as he raised his arm and part of the fortress wall came down and opened up a tube. The tube opened up to reveal a special suit with Naruto's red sun spiral on the chest. Special forearm guards and gloves and a belt. It had a dark crimson color scheme with dark blue streaks in the sun's design. Imagine the Man of Steel suit but no cape. The people of Earth and Krypton are very different in many aspects but similar in others, and I believe that is a good thing. They necessarily won't make the same mistakes as we did. Not if you help them, Null. Not if you be their strength. Minato said as he showed Naruto's his symbol. That's what our house symbol means. The symbol of the House of Otto means strength. Strength to help lead the people of Earth to a better tomorrow. Strength to bring out the best and good in all people. How do I know if I'm ready? Naruto asked. You are, my son. You were not raised on Krypton but on Earth. Your abilities may be of my blood but your heart and soul are human and of your experiences in Smallville. And because of that, You will protect the Earth and lead it to a brighter future. Minato said as he smiled at Naruto, and then his hologram disappeared. Always hold on to Smallville. Naruto heard as he turned to see his Earth father, Jonathan Kent. Dad. Naruto said with a smile. You are ready, son. Jonathan said with a huge smile on his face as Naruto nodded. Naruto then looked at the suit and put it on, and it was a good fit. It felt right. NC 967. Naruto shouted as the drone came by. Hello, Null. How can I help you? The drone asked. I don't suppose you can quickly whip up something that changed my appearance? Naruto asked. Of course. But may I ask why? The drone asked. If I remember anything from Smallville, it's that I was nearly discovered whenever I kept saving people. If I'm going to keep doing this, I need my secret safe. Naruto said as the drone nodded and quickly got to work. The drone was able to fix up Naruto something that he could use to alter his appearance when he was in costume. Naruto walked out of the fortress and saw Clark standing in the snow and basking in the sun in his new suit. It was similar to Naruto's but colored blue and red with a cape. Naruto then walked out and stood next to him. Nice outfit. Not a fan of the cape though. Naruto said as Clark looked at him and noticed he looked different. I like it. It's my colors, but why do you look different? Clark asked. He saw that Naruto's hair was no longer blonde but jet black. It kept its spiky nature but was styled differently and a lot shorter. Naruto's eyes changed color, so they were now brown, and his whisker marks were gone. And because Naruto's whisker marks were gone, his face looked different. Honestly, if you didn't know Naruto, you wouldn't recognize him now. Regular Naruto is his Naruto Shippuden hair, while superhero Naruto is Naruto the Last Movie hairstyle. I had NC 967 whip up a small device to put on my collar. Naruto said as he showed Naruto the small pin with his spiral sun on it. When I put on my suit, it alters my appearance, so I'm not that easy to recognize. If we're gonna be using our powers to save people on a global scale, we'll need to work extra hard to keep our identities a secret. You're right. Maybe I'll do something like that, Clark said as Naruto nodded. So, you think we're ready to introduce ourselves to the world? Ready as we'll ever be, so let's do it in a big fashion. Naruto said as Clark nodded, and both flew straight into the air and into the sky. They flew through the crowds and flew fast enough to break the sound barrier. Clark and Naruto looked at each other and smiled as they then flew faster and soon passed Europe. They then flew up into the sky near the stratosphere and looked at how amazing the planet looked, and then flew back to Earth and flew over Africa and crossed the Atlantic. Naruto and Clark entered US airspace and were flying back home when their super hearing picked up something. Help me. They heard, and they quickly made their way to the cry for help. They flew to the cry for help, which led them to a large forest fire at Yosemite National Park. They looked down and saw campers gathering all the stuff that could and tried to escape the campgrounds before the fire cut off their escape. Naruto saw a family of 3 running from the fire as fast as they could, but they didn't see a falling tree right above them, so Naruto swooped in and saved them from being squished. Clark saw a family stuck in a camping RV and trapped by a raging inferno, so he quickly swooped down and lifted the RV out of there. Naruto and Clark then quickly got the other campers to safety as the Park Service and Fire Department began to arrive and were greeted to the sight of people being whisked to safety from the raging fire. Then people looked up to the sky and saw 2 men in colored outfits, floating in the sky. They took out their phones and began taking photos or recording what was happening. Naruto and Clark took a deep breath and used their freeze breath to put out the fire. Everyone was amazed at the sight of the floating men who put out the raging forest fire. Naruto and Clark then quickly flew away as the people talked to one another about what had just happened. They then heard more cries of help, which led them stopping a bank robbery in New York City, Las Vegas, and Miami, an attempted murder in Gotham, a hostage situation in Los Angeles, a police standoff with criminals in Seattle, a construction wreck in Chicago, and a gas explosion in San Diego. They were in time for the saves and were quick enough that their faces weren't clearly captured. Line break XXXXX. The next day, Naruto and Clark went to Metropolis to go talk to Chloe. Clark decided to act on what Naruto said and take steps to keep his secret identity safe. Clark decided to wear glasses, change his hair, and walked with a bit of a slouch and changed his mannerism. Hopefully it would help convince people that Clark Kent was just a regular person. They walked into the Daily Planet to see everyone on the floor moving in haste. It must have been a big news day. Naruto and Clark looked at the TV screens and they saw what the big news day was. It was them. All of the news stations and social media were blowing up with photos and videos of Naruto and Clark in their outfits and saving people. Pictures from the forest fire, bank robberies and the gas explosion. The pictures are good but no clear shot of our face. So far, so good, Naruto said as Clark nodded and they saw Chloe talking to her editor, Perry White. Sullivan, headline. Mysterious saviors. Gods or men? Perry said as Chloe wrote that down. I'm on it, Chloe said as Perry left and she saw the guys. Hey, I see you guys made your big entrance. By the way, love the suits. Thanks. So, how has our big debut been received? Clark asked as they walked over to Chloe's computer. Well, every news and social media outlet are running the amateur photos and videos of you guys. Granted they're OT great, but they're good enough to spur talks and questions about what happened. Chloe said as they looked at the TV monitors and saw the opinions and statements about Naruto and Clark. Some believed that Naruto and Clark were people who used advanced tech for their powers. Some thought they were human experiments who were gifted superpowers, while others thought they were US military projects or robots. People questioned what they wanted. Were they good guys or bad guys? If they were good guys, who did they answer to? Did they belong to one country or answer to a political leader? And if they were saving people, why did they show up today? Not all of it is likable or good, but it's out there, Chloe said as Naruto and Clark nodded. Well, that's what we want. We want people to know we're out there and we're here to help, Clark said as Naruto looked around. Where are Lois and Jimmy? Naruto asked. Oh, they're busy at City Hall doing a story. The governor's here to do a speech on his new budget plan and Perry had Lois and Jimmy cover the press conference, Chloe said as Naruto nodded. So is Lois all right? Clark asked. Well, when I mentioned you before she didn't seem to flinch. Just give her some time, Chloe said. Yeah, soon you guys will. Boom! A huge explosion could be heard from miles away and shook the building as desks and cabinets fell over. What happened? Chloe asked as Naruto and Clark saw a fire, miles away at the city limits, close to the Metropolis nuclear power plant. Someone set off an explosive device at the Metropolis nuclear plant, a reporter said as everyone scrambled to get their items. Naruto, Clark, you guys. Chloe didn't finish her sentence as she saw Clark and Naruto were gone. She walked up to the window and saw two blurs fly towards the power plant. Good luck, guys. Naruto and Clark flew at full speed to the power plant and saw part of the plant on fire and people running for safety. Naruto saw two workers running from the building as a broken beam fell from a tower and was about to squish them, so Naruto flew down and stopped it from squishing them. Clark flew down and moved some rubble that was blocking the exit so people could run. Naruto pushed the beam back into place and melted it back in with his heat vision. He then flew over to the fire and used his freeze breath to put it out. Naruto and Clark saw part of the reactor wall crumble, fall over and would crush everyone. Naruto and Clark flew over and stopped the wall from falling onto the people and lifted it up. Go! Naruto shouted as he lifted it up into the air as the workers saw them lift the giant concrete wall and put it back to the reactor while Clark used his heat vision to melt the metal support back together. Naruto used his X-ray vision and looked through the building and saw power plant workers running to safety, but main control room was a different story. Naruto saw the power plant technicians being held at gunpoint by 6 men armed with guns. Clark, there are hostages, Naruto shouted as Clark used his X-ray vision and saw the situation. Let's go, Clark shouted as they flew down and smashed through the roof of the control room, shocking the technicians and the terrorists. Naruto super sped forward and knocked one terrorist against the wall and knocked him out, and then grabbed the gun of the second one and pushed him away. Clark did the same to 2 other terrorists while the remaining 2 opened fire on Clark and Naruto, but the bullets just bounced off their skin and suits and ricocheted around the room. Naruto then super sped forward and slammed them against the wall and knocked them out. He then piled them together, grabbed a metal railing and tied them up while Clark used his heat vision to cut the binds off of the technicians. Are you all right? Clark asked as the technicians nodded. It was all they could do after they were in shock over what just happened. Is there anyone else here? Naruto asked. No, but we've got a big problem. The terrorists planted an explosive near the reactor and it's compromised. The reactor is going to go critical. the technician said as he looked over the panels and saw the heat and power level going extremely high. Is that bad? Naruto asked. If we can't stop it, then we'll have an American Chernobyl, the technician said as he tried to activate the coolant system and turn off the reactor, but it wasn't working. The terrorists destroyed the controls. Can you stop it? Clark asked. I can't stop it from here, the controls are shot. We need to cool the reactor down and cap the radiation chamber to keep the radiation contained, the technician said as he pointed to the cameras and showed them what to do where. Let's cap the chamber first, Naruto said as Clark nodded, and they flew away as the technician monitored the power levels of the reactor. Naruto and Clark flew down the radiation chamber and saw the massive hole caused by the explosion. Naruto and Clark quickly picked up the damaged lead wall and placed it back into place and used their heat vision to melt it back in where they could, but there were still gaps and holes. They then tore off other metal panels to cover up the holes and melted them in place and managed to fix the radiation chamber. Nice, but now we need to cool down the reactor. It'll go critical in 1 minute, the technician said over the intercom. Naruto and Clark flew to the reactor and saw it overheating, so they quickly used their freeze breath to cool it down. When their freeze breath hit the hot reactor, it created steam which filled up the room, but the reactor was slowly cooling down. The technician looked at the monitor and saw the reactor temperature slowly cooling down. Come on, the technician said as the core soon reached regular levels, and then the technician began to power down the reactor. Naruto and Clark saw the reactor turn off and stopped. We did it. The reactor is off, the technician said as Naruto and Clark smiled. Naruto flew the technician out of the plant and into the parking lot where they saw the police, fire department and media arrive on scene. Naruto put the technician down and smiled as Naruto smiled back and floated up to Clark. Naruto and Clark floated in the sky as the media and bystanders took photos and videos. Naruto and Clark smiled and were about to fly off when they heard something big break in the city. They immediately flew back to the city and to City Hall where they heard the noise. They saw a giant crane fall from the roof of a building near City Hall and was about to fall onto the crowd of news reporters, bystanders and the governor's detail. The crane smashed part of the building and was just about to fall onto the crowd. Lois and Jimmy tried to run away, but Lois tripped. Jimmy ran to help her but saw the crane about to fall on them and braced themselves, but it never came. They opened their eyes and looked up to see the crane had stopped in midair. They saw that it was stopped by 2 men who were holding it up. They looked and saw the 2 men stand up and lift the crane and got a better look at them. They saw their suits, the symbols on the suits and the men wearing them, and Lois and Jimmy recognized them instantly. Smallville? Lois asked as she saw Clark and Naruto lift up the crane. Clark smiled at Lois and winked at her while Naruto nodded. Clark and Naruto then flew up and lifted the crane above the crowd. Jimmy grabbed his camera and quickly began taking photos of Naruto and Clark lifting the crane up and put it back on the building. The crowd then cheered and clapped at their mysterious saviors as Jimmy took more photos and Lois was speechless. Naruto and Clark smiled at each other and then flew away. Jimmy then looked at Lois. Did you know they could do that? Jimmy asked as Lois fainted. Lois? Line break XXXXX. After their Metropolis debut, Naruto and Clark returned home to Smallville to finish some farm work. Martha went to the grocery store while Clark was fixing the irrigation ditch and Naruto was in the kitchen working on his laptop. His boss sent over some manuscript to look over and help edit. New manuscripts that were sent to the company were edited and looked over by several members of the publishing company before the editor gave it the thumbs up or down. Naruto was busy working, fixing some lines on page 45. He took a sip of coffee when he heard a car pull up to the house. Naruto! Clark shouted as Naruto walked out and saw Clark standing outside the house, but he wasn't alone. With him was Lois, Jimmy and Chloe, who just arrived in a car. Oh, Naruto said. Yeah, oh, come on, let's talk, Lois said as she and Jimmy walked into the house. Chloe walked up to them and looked at them. Sorry, guys. I tried to give you a heads up but Lois snatched my phone, Chloe said as Naruto and Clark nodded. They then walked in and saw Jimmy looking at them while Lois looked irritated and annoyed. Clark grabbed a rag and wiped his hands clean of dirt while Naruto closed his laptop and Chloe stood by them. No one spoke for about a minute, which made for some awkward silence when Naruto broke it. So, I'm guessing you both have a lot of questions, Naruto said. That would be an understatement, Jimmy said. Yeah, Well, you find out that two people you thought you knew as simple farm boys but are instead two super strong meteor-infected men in tights. Lois said as she glared at Clark. To be fair, they're not tights. Naruto said as Lois glared at him. Not important. This would explain all of the weird things over the past years. The random appearances, the saves and the crappy excuses. All this time I've just cracked it up to a case of Peter Pan syndrome, but you guys are the opposite. We want answers. Lois said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. If you guys don't mind, Jimmy said as Lois slapped him on the chest. Well, there is no hiding it from you two anymore since you recognized us, Naruto said as he cleared his throat. You're right. We've been using our powers to help people, long before we met you two. But we're not meteor infected. Okay. Then what? Were you guys human experiments? In a freak accident? Jimmy asked. No, we are not from around here. We're not human, Clark said as Lois and Jimmy looked at him. What do you mean? Lois asked as she realized. You guys are aliens. Yeah. Naruto replied. Alien as in from another planet? Jimmy asked. Yeah. Naruto replied. Wow. Lois said as digested that piece of information. Our planet died years ago and our birth parents sent us to Earth. We were found by our parents and we've been on Earth ever since, Naruto said. So, you guys have always been able to fly and stuff? Jimmy asked. Not always, Naruto said. Okay, so what can you guys do? Lois asked. I guess you guys should know. We can shoot fire out of our eyes, blow ice-cold breaths of air. We can hear a whisper from miles away, see through solid objects and fly faster than the speed of sound, Clark said. Wait, go back. Can you explain the see through solid objects part? Lois said as she raised her arms up. No, Lois. We have to concentrate. And even if we did, I never peeped on you, Clark said as Naruto chuckled. So you guys have had these powers all this time. How did I never notice? I mean, was I high the entire time? Lois asked as Naruto, Clark and Chloe chuckled. Well, the important thing is you guys know now. Only a few people know who we really are. Chloe is one of them. We need you two to keep this a secret, Naruto said. Why? I mean, come on guys. If yesterday was any indicator, you want people to know who you are. Jimmy said as he showed them today's copy of the Daily Planet. It showed a picture of the two of them in costume, floating in the air after stopping the falling crane. The headline read Men of Steel Save Metropolis and was written by Lois. Oh, nice headline. Chloe said. Yeah, and it sold out every single copy in the newsstands. I mean, you guys are global news, Lois said. Yes, our hero identities are. We want people to know that we're here to help. But we also want to make sure that the world doesn't know that Clark and Naruto Kent are these heroes, Clark said. Because if people knew that Clark and Naruto were these heroes, then everyone who knew you guys would be targeted, Jimmy said as Clark and Naruto nodded. We've done a good job so far, but if we're gonna keep doing this, we need to be more careful. We know this is a lot for you guys to take in, but we need you two to keep this a secret, Naruto said as Jimmy and Lois nodded. Of course. It's the least we can do after what you guys did, Jimmy said. This is just so amazing. It's not every day you learn that the guy you've been dating is like a god, Lois said as Clark chuckled. Lois, I'm not a god. I'm just unique, Clark said. And keeping this secret won't be easy. I've had a few years of practice to get it down. I'll help you guys along the way, Chloe said as the front door opened and Martha walked inside in a hurry. Lois, Jimmy. Martha said. It's okay, Mom, they know, Clark said as Martha nodded. Hey, Mrs. Kent. Lois said. Hi. It's nice you two know now, but I think we've got a problem. I was at the store and I saw something on the news. Turn the TV on, Martha said as Naruto grabbed the remote and turned on the TV to the news station. Oh my god, Chloe said as they looked at the news and saw the problem that Martha was referring to. The news was showing amateur video of a UFO sighting in the sky. It was a spaceship that was hovering in the skies above Earth. I don't suppose this is a false alarm and you guys left your spaceship in the sky by accident? Lois asked. This isn't us, Naruto said. Then all of a sudden, all the lights and power in the house shut off. That can't be good. Jimmy said as the TV then turned back on and began making funny sounds and began showing distorted video signals, like it would show when there isn't a clear signal. Then a voice and words began to appear. "You are not alone," the words and voice said and kept repeating. Chloe took out her phone and saw the same thing and message appear. "It's coming in over the RSS feeds. It even took over my phone," Chloe said as the message kept repeating until the sound distorted and now showed a distorted image of some person. "My name is General Zod. I come from a world far from yours. I have journeyed across an ocean of stars to reach you. I come to you with glad tidings, for the Earth is doomed and I am here to save it. You are a primitive and destructive race, and if left to your own path, you will destroy your world. I come to you as a savior and will bring this planet to the glory of mine. All that I ask is your undying loyalty. Any opposition will be met with death. To the leaders of the planet Earth, I give you a small sample of the devastation I will show to whoever opposes me," Zod said as they heard a loud boom. They ran outside to see a huge beam of light in the distance that shot straight into the sky. "Oh my God," Lois said as they saw the devastation from whatever Zod just did. "This is just a small sample of the devastation that awaits you should you oppose me. Surrender within 24 hours, or your planet will be destroyed," Zod said as the feed cut off and the power turned back on. "That is not good," Jimmy said. "Is he a friend of yours?" Lois asked. "He's not a friend but someone very dangerous," Clark said as Naruto nodded. "We'll be right back. We need to go get some answers. Can you guys dig up everything you can on where that ship is and what the military is going to do? They have no idea what they're dealing with," Naruto said as they nodded. "We'll do everything we can. Good luck," Chloe said as Naruto and Clark super sped out of the house and flew straight to the fortress to get some answers. They arrived at the fortress and entered the main area as the hologram of Jor-El appeared. "Hello, Kal-El. Null Auto. Do you need assistance?" Jor-El asked. "Zod has arrived on Earth," Clark said as Jor-El was confused. "That is impossible. He and his followers were placed on a prison ship and locked in the Phantom Zone," Jor-El said. "Well, he's out. It's possible and he made his way to Earth," Naruto said. "We came here because we need to know how to stop him," Clark said as Jor-El took a deep breath. "You knew him, right?" Naruto asked. "The Zod I knew died when Krypton was destroyed. The man he is now is someone who is not to be trifled with. Zod has years of military training on Krypton and 14 followers who were sent with him to the Phantom Zone. He is a man who is not to be trifled with." "What does he want?" Jor-El asked. "He said he has come to conquer Earth, to help lead the people of Earth into a better tomorrow," Naruto said as Jor-El thought for a second. "What is it?" Clark asked. "Did he leave his ship?" Jor-El asked. "We don't think so. He took over the TV feeds to spread his message and shot a beam of energy from his ship. We don't know if he left his ship," Clark said. "Zod and his followers are unaware of the change that will happen should they be exposed to Earth's yellow sun. They will gain an increased strength and speed due to Earth's lighter gravity, but only myself, Zor-El and Min Auto knew of the effects Earth's yellow sun would grant Kryptonians. That will give you an advantage," Jor-El said as he then walked over to the fortress computer and pressed some buttons. 2 small ice pedestals then rose out from the ground, and on those pedestals were 2 small crystals, each designed with Naruto and Clark's house symbol. "These will help as well." Naruto and Clark took the crystals and looked at them. "What are they?" Clark asked. "Special crystals that act as portals to the Phantom Zone, the prison where Zod and his followers were sentenced. Zod is relentless and his followers will do whatever he commands. If I am right, he will try to kill you both to conquer Earth," Jor-El said. "We won't kill him," Clark said as Naruto nodded. "Then the only other way to stop him without killing him is to send him back to the Phantom Zone. Touch the crystal to Zod and it will send him back," Jor-El said. "But what about his ship?" Naruto asked. "I will prepare a larger device that will send it back to the zone and disable it to prevent another escape," Jor-El said as Clark and Naruto nodded and turned to leave. "But be careful. Zod is a master of strategy. If he sees you, he will have contingencies for your presence." "We will," Clark said. "Go, my son, and be careful," Jor-El said as Clark and Naruto flew away. Line break XXXXX. Naruto and Clark flew straight back to Metropolis to talk to Chloe and Lois and see how the world was reacting to Zod's message and what the US Army was reacting. They entered the floor of the Daily Planet and saw it was a madhouse. Reporters and photojournalists were running all around the floor to work on stories on the recent broadcast that took over every single TV and RSI feed on the planet and on the floating spaceship that was hovering in a low-atmosphere orbit. Naruto and Clark walked through the sea of reporters and saw Chloe just get off the phone. "Guys, thank God you showed up," Chloe said. "How bad is it?" Naruto asked. "Well, the governments of the world are on full alert and preparing everything they can just in case," Chloe said as they walked over to Lois, who was with Jimmy. "Lois, what did your dad say?" Clark asked. "Officially, the general denied comment, but off the record, he says that the president has given the order to prep the silos around the entire country. After that display of power Zod showed, the army isn't taking any chances," Lois said. "Same thing with the other governments around the world. Not to mention the fear and paranoia that have people going crazy. The police are doing what they can, but it'll only get worse," Jimmy said. "So, did you guys get the information you wanted? Think you can reason with this guy?" Lois asked. "Highly unlikely, but we'll try. If that fails, we'll send them back to where they came from, and this time they'll stay," Clark said as they nodded when Chloe got an alert on her computer and she raced over. "Oh no," Chloe said as they walked over. "What is it, Chloe?" Naruto asked. "I sent up an algorithm to detect any hidden military chatter and it just picked up something. Apparently, the US military is going to try and launch a preemptive strike earlier than we thought," Chloe said. "When?" Jimmy asked. "In an hour. The start of the attack is being orchestrated at the Mackenzie airfield about 70 miles from Smallville," Chloe said. "They don't stand a chance against Zod. They'll be slaughtered," Clark said. "Let's go," Naruto said as Clark and Naruto turned to leave. "Guys," Chloe shouted as they turned. "Be careful," Chloe said as she ran up and hugged them and they hugged back. "Thanks, Chloe," Naruto said as he hugged her and Lois walked up to Clark. "Be careful, Smallville," Lois said as she hugged Clark and he hugged back. "Naruto, you think you and Clark can stop him?" Chloe asked. "Maybe. But if you don't hear back from us in an hour, head to the caves in Smallville and use the key to head to the fortress. There should be something there can stop Zod's ship," Naruto said as Chloe nodded. "You better come back," Chloe said as she began to tear up and Naruto smiled. "Let's go, Clark. Time to save the world," Naruto said as they entered the elevator and Naruto took off his button-up and shirt to reveal he was wearing his suit underneath and Clark did the same thing. They then quickly flew up the elevator shaft and out of the building and straight to the Mackenzie airfield base to stop the military from attacking. Naruto and Clark quickly flew towards the Air Force base and when they arrived, they hovered outside the main gate to the compound. The soldiers at the security checkpoint looked up and saw two men in suits floating in the air. They quickly pulled out their guns, ran up and pointed them at Naruto and Clark. "Freeze!" they shouted as Naruto and Clark stayed in the air. "We would like to speak to the general in charge," Naruto said. The soldiers looked at them. One of the soldiers then looked at the other. "Go get General Swanwick," one of them said as one soldier left and ran to the base. After a few minutes, more men on the base armed up and pointed their guns at the two hovering men outside their base. They loaded heavy machine guns, armed cannons, jeeps and tanks and pointed them all at the two men and waited for the order to fire or for the two men to make the first move. Then a black sedan drove up to the checkpoint and 4 people got out. Naruto and Clark used their supervision to see their name tags. Lieutenant General Swanwick, Colonel Nathan Hardy, Dr. Emil Hamilton and Captain Carol Ferris. "All right, you've got our attention. What is it you want?" General Swanwick asked. "Just to talk, General. That's all," Naruto said. "You two come to a restricted United States military base and demand my presence to just talk." "Talk about what?" General Swanwick asked. "The spaceship orbiting above Earth," Clark said as the general and colonel shared a look. "We'll talk. What do you have to say?" General Swanwick asked as Naruto and Clark lowered down and touched the ground as the men kept their guns trained on the two men. "We came to stop you from launching attacks against the spaceship. You don't know what you're up against," Clark said as the general stepped forward. "And you do? Two boys with special powers who managed to save a few civilians in Metropolis. What exactly is your relationship with the alien threat? General Swanwick asked. We come from the same planet. But we're nicer. Naruto replied as he saw Dr. Hamilton cover his mouth. Relax, Dr. Hamilton. You can't blame me for being cautious. You too might be carrying some kind of alien pathogen, Dr. Hamilton said. Been here for nearly 30 years, Doctor, haven't infected anyone yet, Clark said. That you know of. The United States government have legitimate security concerns about the spacecraft, and now you. Who exactly are you two? General Swanwick asked. People who want to help. General Zod is someone who isn't to be trifled with, and your weapons won't do anything. We'll handle him, Naruto said. How? Swanwi is to know. If you are at all concerned with the safety and security of your men, you'll let us handle this, Naruto said as he and Clark turned to leave. And what should happen if you fail? Swanwick asked. Then there won't be anyone else who can stop him, Naruto said as Clark and Naruto flew into the air and away. They flew into the air and towards Zod's ship that was in low orbit around the planet. They slowed down as they saw the large ship in front of them. So should we knock? Clark asked as Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Then they saw the ship hum, like the engine had turned on, and saw a large cargo door open up near the side of the ship. I think that's for us, Naruto said. Let's be careful, Clark said as he and Naruto flew down and entered the cargo hold and saw about 4 smaller-sized alien ships lined up. This place must have been the hangar. They landed on the ground and the hangar door closed behind them. Once it did, 4 people dressed in strange armor and armed with strange-looking guns entered the hangar. Kal-El. Null Otto. General Zod sends his greeting to you. We are to escort you to him, one of them said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. Of course, Clark said as Naruto and Clark followed each the 4 men and were escorted through the ship and into what seemed like the main control and observation room of the ship. In the room were the rest of Zod's followers and Zod himself. General Zod from Man of Steel. General Zod, one of them said as Zod turned to see Naruto and Clark. Kal-El, Null Otto. Welcome. We've been expecting you, Zod said as Naruto and Clark walked up to him. I take it you're Zod, Naruto said. General Zod, our commander. Feora, his second in command, said. It's all right, Feora. These two are unfamiliar with our ways. We can forgive them any lack in decorum, Zod said as he walked up to Naruto and Clark and looked at their faces. You two are the spitting images of your fathers. And I see you've taken to wearing your house symbols. Good. As the last survivors of Krypton, it is important that we remember our home. Then where does threatening the people of Earth fall into that plan? Naruto asked as Zod chuckled. It was merely a show. Nothing but the bright lights of the ship focused to look threatening. To draw you two to me, Zod said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. When my ship neared Earth, our scanners managed to pick up the Kryptonian energy signal from the Fortress of Knowledge located in the northern part of the planet. It was the same signal of the crystals of knowledge that Jor-El invented years ago. I knew he would only give them to his son. So you did all this to draw us out? Why? Clark asked. To complete my mission. To protect what remains of Krypton. Our race will live again, Zod said as he walked around the ship and Naruto reached his hand down to his belt where his crystal was located. Back on Krypton, I was its military leader, your father's the foremost scientists, and the only thing we all agreed on was that Krypton was dying. In return for my efforts to protect our civilization and save our planet, I and my fellow officers were sentenced to the Phantom Zone, Zod said as Naruto and Clark glanced at each other and reached down to their crystals. We were adrift, destined to float amongst the zone for what seemed like an eternity. Eventually, we managed to retrofit the Phantom projector into a hyperdrive. Your fathers made similar modifications to the ship that brought you to Earth. And so the instrument of our damnation became our salvation, Zod said. We then spent years scouring the galaxy, visiting the old Kryptonian outposts, in hopes of finding other survivors. But alas, cut off from Krypton, these outposts withered and died long ago. We salvaged what we could, armor, weapons, technology, even a world engine, until we made our way to the Milky Way galaxy and to planet Earth, Zod said as he nodded to his men. Clark and Naruto were then restrained as 4 of Zod's men grabbed Naruto and Clark and restrained their arms so they couldn't move and reach for their Phantom Zone crystal. What are you doing? Naruto shouted as he and Clark tried to move. Doing what I must to ensure Krypton survives. We are the remnants of a once great civilization, and it is our duty to ensure our race's survival. And this planet is perfect. On planet Earth, Krypton will begin again, Zod said. Then why did you draw us here? Clark asked. Because I wish for you two to join me. Join me, and with Jor-El's Kryptonian's technology, we can make this planet our utopia. Zod said as Naruto struggled to get free. And what the people of Earth? Naruto asked. The foundation has to be built on something. Here, it will be built on the bones of the humans who oppose me. Zod said as Clark and Naruto tried to get free but for some reason, felt that their super strength was gone. They tried using their speed, heat vision, but they weren't working. We'll never join you, Clark said as Zod frowned and turned his back to them. Well then I hope that's a decision you can live with, forever. I have a duty to my people. And I will not let anyone prevent me from carrying that out, Zod said as his men quickly backed away from Naruto and Clark. Zod then turned around and tossed a small Kryptonian ring device into the air which then flew behind Naruto and Clark. Naruto and Clark recognized it as the same device that Namek and E3 attempted to use on Clark and Naruto. Naruto and Clark tried to run away but were soon sucked into the ring and transported to the Phantom Zone. No! Clark and Naruto shouted as they were whisked away from planet Earth, leaving it completely at the mercy of Zod and his followers. Line break XXXXX. Naruto and Clark were captured in their weird crystal, prism cells that transported them away from planet Earth. They felt helpless, as it was now left at the mercy of Zod and his followers and there wasn't anything they could do. Naruto punched his prison but couldn't get free, when all of a sudden, he and Clark were sucked through and transported someplace else. They fell through the air and hit a massive hill of dirt and sand and tumbled down the side. They rolled, flipped and smashed onto the ground until they hit level ground and groaned in pain. Naruto lifted his face from the dirt and spit some out of his mouth, along with splat of blood. Naruto groaned as he got on his knees and saw Clark lean up and touch his mouth which was bleeding. Wind blew all around them and kicked up dirt which got in their eyes. Naruto and Clark stood up and saw they were in a barren wasteland. There was no yellow sun, just gray light and there didn't seem like there was anything but desert for miles. Clark, are you all right? Naruto asked as Clark nodded and Naruto pat him on the back. We've got to get out of here, Clark said as Naruto nodded. Come on, Naruto said as he began to walk up the massive dirt hill they fell down. Where are you going? Clark asked. Anywhere but here. We've got to find a way back to Earth, Naruto said as Clark nodded and followed him. They walked up the hill and when they came to the top, they saw more desert and hills for miles. They kept walking, hoping to see something that could help them get out of the Phantom Zone and back to Earth to stop Zod. Naruto and Clark kept waking but then stopped when they heard something. Growls, they heard as they turned around to see what made that noise but didn't see a thing. What was that? Naruto asked as they kept hearing the noise all around them but couldn't see them. Naruto and Clark stood back to back as the noises kept getting louder and closer. Naruto and Clark kept looking around for a sign of whatever was coming was closing in. All of a sudden, something blindsided Naruto and tackled him to the ground while another thing zoomed by and slashed Clark in the leg and then another hit him in the face. Naruto tried to push the thing off of him but couldn't as it slashed at his face and chest while Clark was being dog-piled. The thing then wrapped whatever it had Foe's neck and began choking him. Clark, Naruto managed to say as he felt his airways constricting. More things then came and began clawing at Naruto when Naruto felt one of his pockets on his belt vibrate and quickly reached for it. He grabbed whatever it was and it was his Phantom Zone crystal. Once he grabbed it, it glowed brightly and scared whatever the things were off of him. Naruto then leaned up and saw another figure walking down a sand hill holding something and pointing it at Clark. The object the figure held emitted the same kind of light that Naruto's crystal did and scared the things off of Clark. Clark and Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as they saw their savior. Thank you, Clark said as the figure removed her mask to reveal a woman. Welcome to the Phantom Zone, she said as she looked at their symbols. Come with me. She began to walk away as Naruto and Clark looked at her. Now, she said as she ushered them to follow her. Do we trust her? Clark asked. Do we have a choice? Naruto asked as they followed her. They followed her for about an hour through the desert until they came to a small modest shelter near some cliffs. She took off her poncho and desert clothing for her more comfortable clothes below and handed them wet cloths. "For your wounds," she said as Naruto and Clark took them and wiped up their blood. "Who are you?" Clark asked. "My name is Raya. Not that names matter here," Raya said as she helped clean some of Clark's wounds. "Here being the Phantom Zone," Naruto said as Raya nodded. Jor-El and Zor-El created this place in space to inhabit the most dangerous criminals from the 28 known inhabited galaxies, Raya said. "If this is a prison, does that make you a prisoner?" Clark asked as Raya dug into one of his wounds and Clark groaned. "I may be trapped here, but that does not make me one of the prisoners," Raya said as she washed the cloth. "Are we supposed to just trust you? Because we don't even know you," Clark said. "Good. Trust gets you killed quickly in the zone," Raya said as she then helped clean up Naruto's wounds. "But I am a loyal servant of the House of El and its friends. Given the two symbols you two are wearing, I take it you two are Kal-El and Nal-Otto, the sons of Jor-El and Min-Otto, Krypton's greatest scientists." "You knew our parents?" Clark asked. "I was one of their assistants," Raya said. "When you were 5. You can't be much older than us," Naruto said. "Time is meaningless here. I haven't aged a day since I was sent here," Raya said. "Why are you here?" Naruto asked. "I wanted to stay with them during Krypton's final hours, but they wouldn't have it. Jor-El thought I would have a better chance in the zone," Raya said. "Why didn't our parents come with you?" Clark asked. "Because they wouldn't stop trying to save Krypton. I guess it was meaningless in the end," Raya said as she held her crystal. "It has kept me alive." "What do you mean?" Clark asked. "Some of the most vicious offenders in the zone are dangerous. Their corporeal bodies leaving their essence to haunt the wasteland. Or they are placed in vessels and sent to float above, like Fort Roz," Raya said. "The phantoms that attacked us," Naruto said as Raya nodded. "Only special Phantom Zone crystals created by Jor-El himself can repel them," Raya said as she touched her crystal around her necklace. "Like ours," Naruto said as he took his out and showed Raya. "Exactly. That crystal acts like a shield against the phantoms but can also be used as portals to the zone itself. More than likely the reason you are both here," Raya said. "That's not the reason," Naruto said. "Then what?" Raya asked. "General Zod," Clark said as Raya looked at him shocked. "He escaped from the Phantom Zone along with his followers and made his way to Earth. We met him and he captured us." "Why did you meet with Zod? He isn't someone to be trifled with," Raya said. "We know that now. We were about to send him to the zone but we got captured. Our powers weren't working," Naruto said. "Zod's ship. It mimics the atmosphere and radiation of Krypton. On Earth, you may have your powers, but on Zod's ship, you were essentially human. Jor-El should have taken Zod's body and banished him to the zone, but there was no time," Raya said. "Raya, you helped my father build this place. Is there a way out?" Clark asked. "You cannot go back. Zod and his followers are soldiers with years of training and experience. They will kill you," Raya said. "We have to. We can't let Zod take over Earth. They don't stand a chance against him," Naruto said. "If there was a chance to save everyone you loved from dying, wouldn't you try?" Clark asked as Raya thought for a second. "You truly are your father's son," Raya said as she grabbed 2 extra cloaks for Naruto and Clark. "There is a gateway not far from here that can be used as a portal to leave the zone. It can return you two to Earth." Raya put on her cloak as Naruto and Clark followed her and they left her shelter and made their way through the desert. "If there's a portal here, how come you didn't use it?" Naruto asked. "It wouldn't work. The portal would only work with a member of the House of El or Otto. Jor-El and Min-Otto created it in case anyone tried to imprison any of their loved ones in the zone. As a back door out of this place," Raya said. "Why would he be worried about that?" Clark asked. "They were great men. And like any great men, they had their enemies," Raya said as they made their trek through the desert. They kept walking for another hour through the desert as the wind picked up. "How much farther?" Naruto asked. "Not much, we're close," Raya said. "Ah." Naruto and Clark looked to see Raya shout in pain and down on the ground because something sharp was thrown into her shoulder. "Raya." Naruto shouted as Naruto looked around and got hit by another object in the shoulder. Ah! Naruto shouted as he saw two cloaked figures run up to them. One got the jump on Clark and used a rope to choke him from behind while the other one pulled out a knife. Naruto pulled out the metal spike from his shoulder and swung his fist at the cloaked figure, but the figure blocked his punch. The figure then sliced Naruto in the arm, then again across the face. The figure then punched him in the gut and kicked him across the face and sent him to the ground. Raya got up, but the figure spin kicked Raya across the face and knocked her to the ground. The figure that had Clark then kicked out his legs and forced him to his knees. The figure then took off Clark's hood and looked at him. Naruto and Clark looked at the figure and saw him remove his face mask to reveal he was Namek, one of Zod's followers that Naruto and Clark sent to the Phantom Zone back during when their small ship came to Earth during the second meteor shower. If Namek was here, the one choking Clark was probably Ether. Kal-El, Null Auto, Namek said with a smile as he pulled out another knife. Namek, wait. Don't kill them. Raya said. Why should I spare his life? The ones who sent me here, Namek said. They can open the gateway. I was bringing them to you. They can free us all, Raya said. Well, then, Namek said as he kicked Naruto in the stomach and then yanked him to his feet. You'll live a while longer. Move. Ether said as she pushed Clark and Raya forward while Namek pushed Naruto. They walked about 20 minutes until they came to a group of pillars and a podium, the portal out of the Phantom Zone. Hurry, others will be here soon, Ether said as she then punched Clark across the face and to the ground while Namek kicked Naruto in the gut. Open the gateway, Namek shouted as he pulled out his knife. They don't know how. But I do. Give me the knife, Raya said as Namek handed her the knife. Ether grabbed Clark while Raya made a cut on his palm to draw blood. It is his blood. The blood of the House of El that is the key to opening the gateway. We trusted you, Clark said in anger as Naruto looked at her and she winked at him. Trust is for the weak, Namek said. You're right, Raya said as she then spun around and Slaz's neck. He gasps as he grabbed his neck to stop the blood flowing out. Namek, Ether shouted as Naruto elbowed her in the face and knocked her away. Raya then helped Naruto and Clark to their feet. The gateway, go! Raya shouted as they saw phantoms and other prisoners closing in. Naruto and Clark ran to the podium while Raya and Ether were engaged in a knife fight. Ray and Ether fought one another while Naruto and Clark ran up to the podium as they saw phantoms and zoners closing in. They saw the podium had the sigils of their houses on it, so Clark placed his palm on the symbol and the entire podium glowed brightly. They turned around to see Ether stab Raya in the side and her scream in pain. Ah! Raya shouted. Raya! Clark shouted as the beam of light consumed Naruto, Clark, and several phantoms and then shot straight into the sky. Naruto and Clark felt their bodies rushing through the air, faster than they ever had, and soon saw themselves approaching Earth. They smashed into the ground and felt their powers return. Naruto and Clark stood up and walked out of the crater they just made to see they were in the surrounding forests outside of Smallville. We're back, Naruto said with a smile when his hearing picked up something. It is time to end this world, and begin a new one. Naruto heard Zod, so he and Clark immediately flew towards the voices. Line break XXXXX while Clark and Naruto are in the Phantom Zone, about several hours on Earth. Back on Zod's ship, Zod smirked as he just saw Kal-El and Null Auto sent to the Phantom Zone. The only two people who could possibly stop him were gone. He then went to an observation window to look down at Earth. What now, General? Feora asked. Assemble a squad and take a ship down to the Earth's military bases. Gather the information I require from this Earth's Pentagon and assemble at the ancient Kryptonian control center in the caves. From there, the rebirth of Krypton will start. Zod said as his men nodded, and he and his men soon boarded the ship and went to the Pentagon. Back on Earth, Chloe, Lois and Jimmy were at the Daily Planet as they were watching the global news coverage on the alien threat that was hovering above their planet. Armed military bases all over the world were preparing their armies, and there was even a rumor that they were prepping the nuclear silos to kill the aliens. Their co-workers were all anxious about the incoming threat, and Perry still had reporters there, but he allowed some to head home if they wanted to be with their families. Jimmy was cleaning his camera for the 12th time in a row while Chloe was looking at the clock and Lois was fidgeting. Chloe looked at the clock again and knew that if Naruto or Clark hadn't at least sent her a text or something, something had gone wrong. That's it, Chloe said as she got up and grabbed her jacket. Where are you going? Jimmy asked. To help Naruto and Clark. Come on, Chloe said as she left, and Lois and Jimmy looked at one another. Chloe, wait for us, Lois said as she and Jimmy grabbed their stuff and left with Chloe. There was traffic getting out of the city as people were evacuating and the mass panic on the streets, but they managed to make it out and were in Smallville. After a quick stop at the Kent barn to get the cave key and kryptonite for emergencies, Chloe led Jimmy and Naruto through the old Native American caves in Smallville. Why are we here, Chloe? Jimmy asked. These caves in Smallville are one of the oldest landmarks in the entire world, and for a reason. See some of the symbols on the wall? Chloe asked as they looked. Yeah, Lois replied. It turns out that thousands of years ago, people from Krypton made their way to Earth and helped build them, Chloe said. So that's why Clark and Naruto were always obsessed with them, Lois said. Yup. These caves were their first experience of their own world and also happen to house a secret chamber that will lead us to their second, Chloe said as they walked into the key chamber room. Just remember to keep bundled up, it'll get cold where we're going. And where exactly are we going? Jimmy asked as Chloe put the key in the slot and the table glowed brightly before transporting them around the world into a chamber in the Fortress of Solitude. Welcome to the Fortress of Solitude. At least, that's what Naruto called it when it was first made. This is the last remnants of their home, and Naruto said that there was something here that could help stop Zod, Chloe said as they walked around. Jimmy and Lois were awestruck at what they were seeing. Wow, Lois said as she looked around the fortress and couldn't believe what she was seeing. This is incredible, Jimmy said as he took some pictures. James, Chloe shouted. Oh, right. Sorry, Jimmy said as he turned his camera off. So what are we doing here? Naruto said that if he and Clark weren't back in an hour, there was something here that could help, Chloe said as they walked into the main area. Except I have no idea what we're supposed to be looking for. They looked around when all of a sudden a small floating robot appeared before them. Greeting, I am Cal 9765 Personal Assistance Drone. Please identify yourself, the robot said. Chloe Sullivan, Lois Lane and James Olsen. We're friends of Kal-El and Nal Otto or Clark and Naruto, Chloe said as the robot did a quick search. Yes, Kal-El spoke of his friends. Greetings, Ms. Sullivan. What brings you to the fortress and how may I be of assistance? The robot asked. Naruto told us that there was something here that could help stop Zod, Chloe said as the robot nodded and then left. Where is it going? Lois asked. Greetings. They heard as they turned around and saw the holographic image of two men looked just like Naruto and Clark but much older. Hi, Chloe. Who are they? Jimmy asked. I'm not sure, Chloe said. We are Kal-El and Nal Otto's fathers, Jor-El Said. Oh. Well, it's nice to finally put a face to the disembodied voice Clark and Naruto would hear, Chloe said. My son sent you here? Min Otto asked. Yes. He said that if he didn't hear from us soon after he went to confront Zod to come here. He said there was something that could help stop Zod and his ship, Chloe said. Yes. 1 second. Jor-El Said as he walked over to the Kryptonian computer and implemented a few commands. When he did that, 4 robot helpers appeared, carrying a spaceship. Is that a spaceship? James asked. Yes, it is. Jor-El Said as Chloe recognized it. Wait. That's the ship that landed in Smallville after the second meteor shower, Chloe said. Yes, carrying 2 of Zod's followers. Kal-El brought it here to hide it. We have been modifying the hyperdrive on the ship to turn it into a phantom drive, Min Otto said. What is a phantom drive? James asked. A phantom drive allows a ship to bend space and travel great distances. But this modification will open a hole in space and send it straight to the phantom zone. We are modifying it to work in conjunction with the hyperdrive on Zod's ship. When the 2 drives collide with one another, it will open a portal that will send Zod's ship straight back to the Phantom Zone, Jor-El Said. Great. Lois said. We shall complete the modifications and help you onto the transport platform, Jor-El Said as the robots worked on the ship. Line break XXXXX. Zod and his ship landed in the valley where the caves were located after their trip to the Pentagon. Zod and his men left the ship and entered the caves to the Kryptonian pedestal that Clark and Naruto used to transport to the fortress. Zod then put a briefcase, covered in blood, on the table. "Did you bring what I asked for?" Zod asked. "Yes, sir," one of his soldiers said as he pulled out a small orb known as an omegahedron, a Kryptonian power source and miniature computer that was 100 times more powerful than a nuclear reactor. Zod acquired one by removing it from the prison ship's power system. Zod then opened the case, which was a computer with government access code from the Pentagon. He then placed the omegahedron on the computer's own Kryptonian coding system and began taking over every single U.S. military computer system, military base, nuclear missile and satellite. The computer then began the auto-destruct system of the military satellites and started the countdown to blow up the nuclear missiles and launch others all over the world, killing all the humans. "It is time to end this world and begin a new one," Zod said when all of a sudden, the top of the caves was bashed in when a red and blue blur smashed through and tackled Zod out of the caves, through the ground and towards Smallville. Zod's followers quickly went back to their ships when they saw Naruto land down in the cave. Naruto saw the computer and the strange orb on it and saw the countdown on the screen, so he quickly used his heat vision to fry the computer, which short-circuited it and cut off the omegahedron's connection to the military secure network. The computer then exploded as one of Zod's soldiers charged at Naruto, but Naruto ducked his punch and landed an uppercut that knocked him straight out of the cave. Naruto then flew out of the cave and went to go check on Clark. He saw Clark in Smallville, having just tackled Zod straight through a gas station, which caused a huge explosion and sent civilians away. He saw Zod on the ground in pain and being carried away while Clark was against a car. Naruto quickly flew down and helped his brother. "Clark, you all right?" Naruto asked as he helped Clark, but Zod and some of his followers quickly left in one of their ships. "I'm fine," Clark said as they watched the ship fly fast that it soon disappeared. They then turned around and looked down the street to see two of Zod's followers walking towards them. Naruto recognized one of them as Feora and the other guy was very tall, taller than Naruto and Clark. "2 against 2, I like those odds," Naruto said as he and Clark walked down the street to meet them. "Get inside. It's not safe," Clark said as the Smallville residents quickly ran inside buildings and locked the doors or just ran away to get away from them. Naruto clenched his fist as he and Clark stopped about 50 feet away from Feora and the other Kryptonian. Feora glared at them as she and the Kryptonian soldier Uthor were ready to kill Kal-El and Null Auto. Naruto was about to charge forward when his super hearing picked up distinct military radio chatter coming in fast. He and Clark turned to see two A-10 Warthog fighter jets coming straight for them. The fighters then fired their 30mm Gatling guns and fired straight down on Main Street in Smallville. Naruto and Clark quickly super sped out of the way, but the bullets managed to hit them and the force knocked them back a bit. Feora super sped to the side to avoid being hit, but Uthor didn't and was knocked back by the force of the bullet and into a light post. Naruto saw the fighters bank around, so he decided to focus his super hearing to figure out their orders. "Thunder 11, good hit. Request immediate re-attack. Roger that, Guardian." Making heading at 2-12 degrees, Naruto heard Colonel Hardy say and the pilots respond. Uthor then got up in time to dodge a flying punch from Naruto and grabbed Naruto's right leg. He then smashed Naruto down into the street twice, making a large impact crater, and then threw him straight through the wall of the local Smallville coffee shop, the Talon. Naruto pulled himself out of the wall he was smashed into and saw Uthor standing in the street. He looked around and saw the patrons of the shop under their tables or behind chairs in fear. Naruto looked at the barista behind the counter. "Sorry about that," Naruto said as he then flew out of the shop and punched Uthor in the face and then did another punch and then landed an uppercut that sent Uthor in the air. Naruto then flew up above Uthor and then smacked him back down into the ground and into a crater. Naruto then flew down and walked to the crater and got hit in the face with a large chunk of concrete. "Ah!" Naruto shouted as he rubbed his eyes to get rid of the concrete when he got tackled to the ground. He was then picked up and slammed down into the ground and then thrown through a parked car, causing an explosion. "Rahh!" Naruto shouted as he charged forward and grappled with Uthor, which was a mistake cause Uthor then flipped Naruto onto the ground. Uthor then punched Naruto into the ground and then raised his leg up to stomp, but Naruto kicked Uthor back. Naruto then landed a right and left cross and then kicked Uthor in the chest and knocked him away. Naruto then heard a crash behind him and saw a large crater with Feora on top of Clark, repeatedly punching him in the face. Naruto then blasted her with his heat vision, which knocked her back, which allowed Clark to kick her off and send her flying. Naruto then turned and was greeted with a car to the face as Uthor threw one at him and knocked him away. Naruto rolled on the ground as Clark ran over and helped him up. This is a lot harder than I thought," Naruto said as he and Clark saw that Uthor was still standing and looked like he could continue fighting. Naruto and Clark then turned and saw two military helicopters hovering above them, armed with Gatling guns and missile launchers. The choppers fired their Gatling guns and the gunners unleashed all the bullets they had on the three aliens, but the bullets were useless. They just bounced off or broke against their skin. Uthor then picked up a parked SUV and hurled it at the helicopters. One managed to move out of the way, but the other one wasn't as lucky and its tail rudder was destroyed, sending it spinning out of control. One of the gunners fell out of his seat and was falling, but Clark flew forward and caught him and put him safely on the ground. "You okay?" Clark asked as the guy nodded but then quickly reached for his gun. Clark pushed him away as Uthor charged forward and knocked Clark down the street. Naruto saw the chopper spinning out of control, so he quickly flew to catch it, but Feora jumped in the air and knocked him out of the sky with enough force that he flew 10 blocks away. The chopper crashed down as Feora watched it fall and then turned her attention to the human soldiers while Uthor was keeping Kal-El busy. She saw them close in on her with their human weapons but wasn't scared at all. She then leapt into the air and landed in the middle of the group of soldiers who unloaded their clips into her, but the bullets just bounced off. She then punched a soldier in the chest and knocked him straight into the ground and then elbowed another. She then grabbed one soldier by the throat and super sped to another soldier and grabbed him. She then threw the two soldiers into two more, knocking them down. All the while, the soldiers kept firing on the alien. Feora then super sped forward and punched 3 soldiers and then slammed another one into the pavement. She then kicked a piece of the downed plane into the path of 3 soldiers who were then squished. She looked and saw that Uthor was more than capable of handling Kal-El, so she turned her attention to the soldier who managed to crawl out of the helicopter wreckage. Colonel Hardy managed to get out of the downed helicopter and then grabbed his radio. "Thunder 12, this is Guardian. I want you to put down everything you got just north of my position. This will be danger close," Colonel Hardy shouted as he saw the female alien looking straight at him, so he pulled out his SMG and loaded it. "Copy that, danger close. Good luck, sir," the pilot said as Feora jumped in the air and landed in front of Colonel Hardy as he fired his gun at Feora until it was empty. Then pulled out his pistol and fired until he ran out of bullets and saw that it did nothing. Feora just looked at him and smirked. Hardy knew he was going to die and he would die fighting, so he stood up and took out his knife. Feora saw this and pulled out her own knife, which was 3 times bigger than his. "A good death is its own reward," she said as she and Hardy stared each other down. Colonel Hardy then lunged forward as Feora did the same, but Naruto flew down, smashed her head straight into the ground. Naruto slid to a stop as Hardy saw the alien just save his life. Hardy then grabbed one of his injured men and walked away while Naruto walked towards Feora, whose breathing mask was damaged. With it damaged, she was getting a sensory overload from her exposure to Earth's environment and yellow sun, which was extremely painful. "You will not win. For every human you save, we will kill 1,000,000 more," Feora said as she then grabbed her head in pain and fell to her knees. Naruto then walked forward to knock her out and send her to the Phantom Zone when all of a sudden, he saw a train flying straight at him. The train smashed into him and into the Walmart he was standing in front of and caused a big explosion. Feora turned and saw a missile coming straight at her, so she raised her hand to block it and got hit by the explosion. That combined with her pain from her sensory overload knocked her out. The A-10 fighters were about to fire more missiles when another Kryptonian ship flew by and blasted the 2 fighters to pieces. Clark saw the second ship appear and was about to go stop it when Uthor grabbed him and slammed him into the ground. He then threw him straight into the sky as the Kryptonian ship fired a concentrated energy blast at him. It knocked him through the air, into the Smallville train depot, which caused a huge explosion. The Kryptonian ship then landed down on the street and opened its door. Uthor walked forward and grabbed Feora and entered the ship, and as soon as they did, the ship then flew away. With the aliens gone, The army then focused on the two aliens they knew were still there. 10 armed soldiers walked into the destroyed Walmart as they saw destroyed home appliances and the train wreckage. The train then moved as Naruto came out from behind the wreckage and the soldiers had their guns set on him. Naruto was breathing a bit heavy from that strenuous fight as he saw the soldiers looking at him. Some began to lower their weapons, as they saw that this alien helped them during the fight. Naruto then walked forward as the soldiers parted to them him walk past. Naruto walked out of the destroyed Walmart and saw Colonel Hardy and the gunner that Clark saved walk up to him. "This man is not our enemy," Hardy said as Naruto had a small smile on his face and nodded in gratitude. "Thank you, Colonel," Naruto said as Hardy nodded back. Naruto's super hearing then picked up Chloe's voice from the Kryptonian caves, so he flew into the air and towards her as the soldiers saw him and the other alien fly away. Chloe, Jimmy and Lois had arrived back in the Kryptonian cave after the modifications to the spaceship were finished. Jor-El and Min-Otto had instructed them on what to do to send the Kryptonians back to the Phantom Zone. The only problem was that they needed to get the ship close enough to Zod's ship. Chloe, Jimmy and Lois looked around the caves and saw a lot of holes and rubble around. "Geez, what happened? Was there an earthquake when we were gone?" Lois asked. "Not exactly. They heard as they saw Naruto and Clark hover down into the caves." "Smallville," Lois shouted. She ran up to Clark and hugged him as he hugged back. "Where were you guys?" Chloe asked as she hugged Naruto and Naruto hugged back. "We didn't hear back from you, we were worried." "What happened?" Jimmy asked as he hugged Naruto and Clark, glad they were back. "A lot happened. Zod lured us into a trap with that message. He knew we were here and tried to draw us out to join him or to get us out of his way," Naruto said as Chloe nodded. "Well, like you said, we went to the fortress and I think we got something that can send Zod and his ship back to the Phantom Zone," Chloe said as they looked at the spaceship that used to belong to Namek and Ether. "It's just a tad bit heavy. You think you can lift it?" James asked. "It shouldn't be a problem," Clark said when they all felt a tremor in the ground. "Oh, great. Now what?" Naruto said. "Line break XXXXX." In Zod's ship, he and all his followers just returned from Earth in their ships after Kal-El and Nal-Otto returned from the Phantom Zone, forced Zod to retreat, managed to give Feora and Uthor a run for their money and prevented Zod from using the humans' own weapons against them. Zod and his men were walking back to the main bridge of the ship. "What happened?" one of the soldiers asked. "Kal-El exposed a temporary weakness. What is our status?" Zod asked as the head engineer walked over. "Your original plan to use the humans' own weapons against them will not work without the computer and the Omegahedron. But our computers have finally finished calibrating the world engine and we have analyzed the perfect spots for terraforming," he said. "How long will this process take?" Zod asked. "Once started, 12 hours. But the gravity field the world engine will produce will stop any human interference. Even Kal-El and Nal-Otto will be powerless once the terraforming commences," he said as Zod nodded. "Release the world engine," Zod shouted as they imputed the commands in the computer and the world engine detached itself from the ship and flew down towards Earth. On Earth, back at the Mackenzie Airfield Base, General Swanwick and his analysts were monitoring the alien spaceship and saw that something new was happening. "What just happened?" Swanwick asked. "The ship just split in two. Track 1 is heading east. Track 2 is deploying towards the southern hemisphere," an analyst said. "How fast is that bogey moving?" Swanwick asked. "Approaching Mach 24 and accelerating. It looks like it's gonna impact somewhere in the South Indian Ocean," the analyst said as they watched the screen and saw the object move to its position and saw the main ship move towards Metropolis. "The rest of the ship is descending," another analyst said. "Put it on the board, now," Swanwick said. "Yes, sir," the analyst replied as the main screen showed the images of the ship moving towards the outskirts of Metropolis. They watched as the ship descended till it was about a mile above the ground but was high enough that people in Metropolis could see it. Zod saw his ship move into position and was then told that the world engine was in position. "Bring the Phantom Drive online," Zod said as they powered up the ship's Phantom Drive and it shot a beam of energy straight down through the ground, which made its way through the Earth to the world engine on the other side of the world. The world engine then turned on as it began released gas and smoke and the gravity field around it began to increase. "We are now connected to the world engine," one of Zod's engineers said. Initiate, Zod said as the engineer imputed the command. The world engine then began releasing its gravity field through the center of the Earth and to the main ship near Metropolis, and the environment around both the ship and the world engine began to change into that of Krypton's. The gravity field was also increasing the gravity pull of the Earth and would continue until it was that of Krypton's. Back at the Mackenzie Airfield Base, everyone was looking at the screen and wondering what the aliens were doing. What did they just hit us with? Swanwick asked Dr. Hamilton. Some kind of gravity weapon. It's working in tandem with their ship. Somehow they're increasing the Earth's mass and clouding the atmosphere with particulates, Dr. Hamilton said as he watched the screen and then realized what they were doing. Oh my God, they're terraforming. What's that? Captain Ferris asked. Planetary engineering. Modifying the Earth's atmosphere and topography, Dr. Hamilton said. They're turning Earth into Krypton, Swanwick said. But what happens to us? Captain Ferris asked. Based on these readings, there won't be an us, Dr. Hamilton said as one of the analysts answered the phone and stood up to address General Swanwick. General Swanwick, sir. I'm on with the control tower. Colonel Hardy's on his way in and he's got Superman and Red Sun in tow, the analyst said. Excuse me? Swanwick asked. The aliens, sir. That's Wahem. Superman and Red Sun, the analyst said as General Swanwick, Dr. Hamilton and his guards walked out to the airfield and saw Superman, Red Sun and Colonel Hardy's team return with a chopper carrying an alien ship. He saw the helicopter lower the ship onto a loading truck and Superman and Red Sun hover to the ground. We have a plan, General, Naruto said. Is that what I think it is? Dr. Hamilton asked as he pointed to the spaceship. It's a ship that one of Zod's followers used, Naruto said. This ship is powered by something called a phantom drive. We managed to make some modifications to it. The phantom drive bends space and time. Zod's ship uses the same technology, and if we can make the two drives collide with one another, a singularity can be created, Dr. Hamilton said, as he finished Superman's sentence. Like a black hole? General Swanwick asked as Naruto nodded. Exactly. So when we open that black hole, they'll be sucked in and have no way to come back, Naruto said. So you want us to bomb them with that? Hamilton asked. General, that craft maxes out 17,000 pounds. We can drop it from a C-17. It's a viable plan, Colonel Hardy said. But Red Sun and I need to stop the machine over the Indian Ocean. If we don't, the gravity field will make it impossible to drop the ship, Clark said as General Swanwick nodded. Good luck, Swanwick said as Clark and Naruto flew straight into the sky and flew towards the Indian Ocean to stop the world engine while General Swanwick and the army prepped a C-17 and an escort of jets to accompany them. Line break XXXXX. Superman and Red Sun flew into the air and through the upper atmosphere of the Earth and went supersonic until they neared the South Indian Ocean. They then flew down and saw the world engine. It was pumping out dark clouds of dust which began acting as clouds and began forming lightning and crackling thunder. They saw the water in the immediate vicinity of the world engine was floating, and as the gravity field expanded, more of the ocean began to rise. Superman and Red Sun flew straight down to the world engine and through the cloud of smoke it was producing and immediately began coughing. The air around the world engine was toxic and dirty and immediately began to interfere with Superman and Red Sun's focus. They quickly cleared their throats and focused on the world engine and the expanding gravity field which they could feel. They could feel the gravity getting heavier and that it was taking much more strain and strength to fly. Superman and Red Sun were about to blast the world engine with their heat vision when a large compartment of the world engine opened up to reveal a pool of metallic-looking liquid metal. It then formed a dozen of metal claws which immediately shot out to try and grab them. Superman and Red Sun then immediately began to fly as the claws chased after them. They flew up and swerved around as the claws were like homing rockets and stayed right on their tail. One grabbed Superman and wrapped around him, but he broke free and then smashed another claw to pieces with a punch. Red Sun flew down towards the ground as the claws chomped and tried to grab him as they missed and grabbed up chunks of the ground. Red Sun kept flying until one claw grabbed his leg and smashed him into the ground. Another claw was about to impale him, but Red Sun used his heat vision and blasted it to pieces and then broke himself free. He then flew straight up and smashed through another claw and flew around to keep moving, but he saw Clark get grabbed and brought straight up into the thickest cloud of smoke. Clark coughed and tried to break free, but he couldn't concentrate in the smoke. The claw that dragged Clark down and smashed him into one of the legs of the world engine and then tossed him right into the gravity beam. He was then brought down to the ground, under the heavy gravitational pull, and was stuck there. Red Sun flew up as all the claws focused their attention on him, so he used his freeze breath and froze them before they could get to him. He then smashed them to pieces and blasted the world engine with his heat vision. His heat vision hit the machine, but the metal was extremely durable and tough, so he had to increase the power and intensity. Arg! Red Sun shouted as his heat vision changed from two beams of heat coming from his eyes to a single focused beam of energy that began to melt the metal of the world engine. While Red Sun was attacking the world engine, Superman grunted and groaned under the extreme gravitational push as he used all the strength he could muster to get up and make it to his knees. He struggled under the gravity as he raised his arm up and managed to stand on his 2 feet. Superman then managed to stand up straight and with all his might, flew straight up and was planning on smashing straight through the world engine. Superman shouted as he flew through the air, up the gravity pulse, and smashed straight through the world engine and came out through the exhaust port. Red Sun shouted as his heat vision managed to melt through the armor of the world engine and hit the delicate wires and electrical system. That, combined with Superman barreling right through the world engine, caused it to explode and stop the terraforming process. The wreckage of the world engine then collapsed into the South Indian Ocean as the area that the world engine had affected was going back to normal. Naruto exhaled as he and Clark managed to stop Zod from terraforming Earth. Naruto then flew down to check up on Clark, who was blown away from the world engine explosion and had crashed into a large rock near the shore. Naruto flew down to Clark and saw him slowly sitting up. "Clark, you okay?" Naruto asked as he checked on his brother. "I'm fine. Just tired," Clark said as he sat down to catch his breath. The sun then peeked out from the disappearing clouds of pollution as the sun's rays began to recharge Naruto and Clark and was aiding in Clark's healing. "All right. We'll rest and recharge before we head back to Metropolis," Naruto said as Clark nodded. Line break XXXXX. While Clark and Naruto were talking to the military and stopping the world engine, Zod stood on the deck of his command ship as he watched the gravity field expand. His ship was on the outskirts of a human city, but the human military had arrived with their tanks and weapons to try and stop them, but the gravity field was too powerful. The humans were at their mercy. The wreckage of the military vehicles was floating in the gravity field as it slowly began to expand to the nearby city. He saw the humans desperately try and flee, but there was nowhere they would be safe from him. Zod then turned his attention to one of his monitors that was scanning the planet, and it located the Fortress of Knowledge located in the northern part of the planet. "Feora, assemble a small ship. It's time to greet an old friend," Zod said as Feora nodded and left. Zod's small ship flew through the air and landed outside the Fortress of Solitude. Zod and Feora then exited the ship in their environment suits that had oxygen masks that fed them the oxygen levels they were used to on Krypton. Zod decided to deactivate his suit's environment system and was immediately hit with a sensory overload like before. He then closed his eyes and concentrated, and soon the ringing and headache disappeared. Zod looked around him and saw that his senses were adjusting to the Earth environment and radiation. He then had Feora do the same thing, and she was hit with a sensory overload just like Zod. She fell to her knees and struggled with the pain as she then tried to focus, and eventually the pain went away. Zod then helped her up and nodded to her as she nodded back. He and Feora walked through the snow into the fortress when they saw the large doors slam shut and a hologram of Jor-El appear before them. "You will go no further," Jor-El said as Zod stepped forward. "You still haven't given up on lecturing me, even in death," Zod said. "I will not let you into the fortress, Zod. Or wasn't meant for you," Zod said. "This fortress is the last remnants of Krypton, and our people will begin again from here. Feora, open that door," Zod said as Feora rushed towards the door to bash it open. Once she punched it, the door shocked her and knocked her back. "I am in control of the fortress and I will not let you in," Jor-El said. "For now. But the planet will soon be under my control and you will kneel before me or perish like you did before," Zod said. "That isn't necessary, Zod. There isn't need for violence. Our people can coexist with the humans," Jor-El said. So we can suffer through years of adapting to this planet's environment like your son. The humans are a flawed, barbaric people. This will be mercy, Zod said. I will not let the memory of Krypton be stained with the genocide of a people, Jor-El Said. You cannot stop me. My men are skilled and my technology vastly outweighs anything the humans have, Zod said. You are talking about genocide, Jor-El Said. Yes, and I'm arguing its merits with a ghost, Zod said. We're both ghosts, Zod, can't you see that? The Krypton you're clinging onto is gone, Jor-El Said. Feora, prep the ship. I've grown tired of this nuisance, Zod said as Feora nodded. My son and Null Otto are twice the men you ever were. And he will stop you, I can promise you that. Jor-El Said as Zod walked up to him. Tell me. You have Jor-El's memories, his conscious, can you experience his pain? I will grind your son's bones to dust beneath my heel. I will restore Krypton atop his destroyed bones. And then I will take this fortress, and destroy the last remaining remnants of the House of El. Zod said as he and Feora left to go back to the ship. Back with the US military, the C-17 was loaded with the alien spacecraft which was going to be flown by Colonel Hardy and Dr. Hamilton would accompany them to activate the ship. The C-17 took off and was escorted by a group of F-16s and on its way to Metropolis. The military were en route to Metropolis and could see the city closing in, but they also saw their target. Zod's ship was still active and the gravity field was expanding. Colonel Hardy increased the C-17's altitude while the escort of fighter jets flew straight over the city and towards the ship. Lightning 1 to Northcom, we are nearing the target. Request permission to engage? The lead pilot asked over the comms. Northcom to Lightning 1, you are clear to engage. Send battle damage assessment when able. Out, Swanwick replied. The group of fighter jets fired a volley of missiles at the ship and they flew straight at it with some hitting the floating debris field surrounding the ship. The ones that managed to make it through got close to the ship but then flew off course and hit the ground or hit buildings and streets in Metropolis. The group of fighters quickly banked around for another volley. Avionics are going haywire. The gravity field is pulling our missiles down. We have got to get closer, Northcom Lightning 1 shouted as the planes flew around to get another shot. Bystanders and civilians in Metropolis saw the attempted military attack and the missiles accidentally hitting civilian targets spread panic to an already terrifying situation. The planes flew in closer and released another volley of missiles, but the gravity field did the same thing, and this time, the planes were not caught in the gravity field. Jets were thrown off course and smashed into the floating debris. Some planes crashed into one another while others crashed into buildings. The C-17 was closing in on Metropolis airspace and Colonel Hardy saw the target straight ahead. Northcom, this is Guardian. We are nearing target airspace. Are we cleared to make the drop? Hardy asked. Negative, Guardian. Gravity field is still active, Swanwick said. Damn it. Hardy said as they maintained course to the ship with only 2 rear F-16s as their escorts. They watched the ship and the gravity field expand, and then a few minutes passed when the gravity beam was disabled. Superman and Red Sun must have done their job. They did it. Northcom, this is Guardian. We are passing through phase line red. We are good to go, Hardy said. Godspeed, Guardian. Arm the package. You are cleared hot, Swanwick said as Hardy nodded and then turned on the C-17's intercom system. Prepare the package, Hardy said as his men prepared. They opened up the docking bay door and unhooked the spaceship harnesses in order to push it when they were given the signal. Loadmaster, is the package ready and are we ready to drop? Hardy asked. Affirmative, Guardian. The Loadmaster responded as Hardy lined up for the drop. They were now flying over the city and closing in on the target when all of a sudden, their 2 escort jets were blown to pieces and destroyed. The soldiers looked to see one of the alien ships right on their tail. Guardian, we've got a bogey. Loadmaster shouted as Zod and Feora were in the ship and looked at the human ship in front of them. Feora, target that aircraft, Zod said as Feora targeted the ship. Target acquired, Feora said. Before Zod could fire and destroy the ship, Superman flew towards the ship at Mach 8 and barreled right into the ship and caused it and him to crash land somewhere in the city. They then saw Red Sun fly up to the C-17 and land in the plane's cargo hold. Red Sun then nodded and walked up to the spaceship and lifted it up. Red Sun lifted up the ship with a grunt, because it was made of Kryptonian metal and much heavier than a regular spaceship. Red Sun grabbed it and flew out of the C-17 with it. Guardian, Red Sun has the package. Divert course. Loadmaster said as Colonel Hardy looked outside and saw Red Sun fly ahead of them, carrying the ship with him. Roger that, diverting course. Hardy said as he diverted the plane's course to turn around. Red Sun then flew up and threw the ship at Zod's spaceship, and as they neared each other, they began to react to one another. Beams of electricity began to explode out from both ships, and when they made contact with one another, Zod's ship began to implode. Soon, a black hole appeared where the ship was, and Zod's ship and the other ship was sucked into the portal, and then soon began sucking in cars and parts of buildings. Red Sun flew down to the street, and on his way, he helped save a family of 3 who were pulled in by the black hole. He grabbed the mother, father and daughter as they held on tight. "Hold on," Red Sun shouted as he flew as fast as he could, feeling himself getting pulled in by the black hole. RAHHHH. Red Sun pushed himself faster and stronger than he had before and managed to get out of the black hole's gravity pull. He finally made it away from the black hole and was flying down to the street when the black hole closed and Zod's ship and his followers were back in the Phantom Zone and never coming back. Red Sun flew down the street as the people who weren't immediately evacuated walked out into the streets to see the alien ship gone and to see the flying man who saved them. Red Sun landed on the sidewalk and put the family down, and they immediately all hugged each other. Red Sun smiled as the father looked at him. "You saved us. Thank you," he said. "No problem, it's my job," Red Sun said. Boom. Red Sun turned to something smash into a building and fly through Metropolis. He focused his vision and saw it was Clark, who was then smashed mid-air by Feora, and then Zod, who followed her. "Get to safety," Red Sun shouted as he flew up into the air and towards Clark. He saw Feora punch Clark through the air and Zod close-lined him. Naruto flew straight at them as Zod jumped in the air to punch Clark but was knocked out of the air as Naruto tackled him through 3 parked cars and then threw him down the street. Civilians and bystanders saw the fight and were both amazed and frightened, with some taking out their cameras and recording the fight. "Get out of here," Naruto shouted as Zod charged forward and knocked him down the street. Naruto got up to see Zod walking towards him. "You and Kal-El took my future. Fr Krypton is now destroyed. So I will take everyone you love from you. These humans you protect, I will kill them all and then crush your skull beneath my boot," Zod said as Naruto glared at him and fired his heat vision, which knocked Zod back and into a building. "You talk too much," Naruto said as he flew forward and into the building to see Zod was gone. He was then blindsided as Zod super sped to his right and knocked him out of the building. Naruto got back to his feet and saw Zod charge straight at him, so Naruto flew to the side as Zod smashed into the street. Naruto then flew forward and kicked Zod back as Zod skidded to a stop. Naruto then super sped forward and lashed out with 3 punches, but Zod blocked all of them and punched Naruto across the face and knocked him to the ground. Zod then kicked Naruto across the face and knocked him into a car. Naruto then got up to duck under one of Zod's punches, which Naruto was able to counter with a punch of his own to Zod's stomach. Zod was knocked back as Naruto followed up that punch with another one that knocked him to the ground. Naruto then hit him again and then grabbed him and threw him in the air and into a building. Naruto then flew after Zod to see him and Clark fighting in the streets, and Clark get hit by an uppercut and knocked up a building. Naruto was about to go help when he was blasted out of the air and into a building. Naruto turned to see Feora on the ground and her eyes glowing red. Feora then fired another volley of heat vision as Naruto fired his own to meet hers. Naruto flew out of the hole in the building as his heat vision battled hers in a spectacle of red light and heat. Naruto then stopped and flew straight down as Foora's heat vision smashed into the building. Naruto flew down to the street as Foora's heat vision blasted cars, street signs, lampposts and the ground, but she couldn't turn fast enough to hit Naruto before he punched her down the street. Naruto then followed up and smashed her through the streets and then threw her into the air. He then flew up to smack her back down to the ground, but she turned in mid-air and kicked him across the face and knocked him down to the street in front of the Daily Planet building, making a small crater. Naruto stood up out of the crater to see a lot of the Daily Planet employees who were evacuating the building taking pictures. Naruto then looked up to see Feora was floating in the sky. She must have learned to fly. Raw. Naruto shouted as he flew towards her, and when he got close she punched him across the face and then hit him in the stomach and neck before slamming him down into a building. Naruto immediately got back up and flew after her as she flew through the city with Naruto right on her tail. Naruto fired volleys of his heat vision to knock her out of the sky, but she kept dodging. Naruto saw her fly down a street and knew a shortcut to cut her off, so he flew down another street, and as Feora flew the street but was then tackled out of the air and smashed through a building and knocked to the ground. Naruto then quickly got up and super sped forward to tackle her and knocked her to the ground. He then punched her in the face twice, but Feora grabbed his arm as he went for the third punch. She then head-butted him in the face and knocked him back. She then punched him across the face, kicked him in the back of the leg sending him to his knee, and she then got behind him and began to choke him out. Naruto choked as he tried to break her hold. He stood up and flew backwards and slammed her into a building, but she still kept her grip. Naruto then slammed her into a building again, and then slammed her onto the ground, but she wouldn't let go as Naruto began to feel his airways constrict. "It's over, Null Auto. Your time on Earth has made you weak like the humans," Feora said as she began to squeeze even more as Naruto kept slamming her into buildings to try and get her off, and now he started elbowing her but she wouldn't let go. "Your sense of morality is an evolutionary flaw. You may share our blood but you are not a Kryptonian," Feora said as Naruto kept struggling when he saw something. "You may be right. Labored breathing, but I've got something you don't," Naruto said. "And what would that be?" Feora asked as she kept squeezing. "Friends. Now," Naruto shouted as Chloe stepped out of the alley and opened up a small lead box which held a chunk of green kryptonite. As soon as the lead box was opened, the green kryptonite began to affect Naruto and a surprised Feora. You," Naruto groaned in pain as he and Feora fell to the ground and could feel themselves dying on the inside. What's happening?" Feora shouted as she felt her cells exploding from the inside. "Meet, kryptonite," Naruto managed to say as he felt the pain getting worse. Chloe slowly walked forward as Jimmy and Lois ran out of the alley and grabbed Naruto and pulled him away from the kryptonite. "Jimmy, the crystal," Naruto said as he looked to his pocket and Jimmy nodded. He reached into Naruto's pocket and took out his Phantom Zone crystal. Jimmy then ran over to Feora and touched her with the crystal, and she was soon sucked into the crystal and transported to the Phantom Zone. Chloe then shut the box as Naruto exhaled. "Ah," Naruto said as he felt himself getting better now that the kryptonite was gone. "Thanks." "No problem. I figured with an army of Kryptonians, having some kryptonite would be a good idea," Chloe said as Naruto smiled. "Where's Clark?" Lois asked as they heard a loud boom from the sky and saw Zod and Clark in a locked fight as they flew towards the Earth with dozens of flaming pieces of wreckage coming down as well. Naruto used his supervision and saw the Wayne Enterprises logo. Zod and Clark must have taken their battle to space and smashed a Wayne Enterprises satellite. "I got him," Naruto said as he was about to fly, but Chloe stopped him. "Naruto, you've got to stop that wreckage. It'll wreck the city," Chloe said as Naruto nodded. "I'm on it," Naruto said as he flew into the air and towards the falling wreckage. Naruto flew into the air and held his fists out and smashed right through a piece of the falling satellite. He then banked around and concentrated his heat vision as much as he could into a focused heat blast and obliterated 4 more pieces of the falling satellite. He then smashed into another piece of wreckage as he saw 3 more pieces heading towards the LexCorp building. He then flew as fast as he could and used his freeze breath to freeze the pieces of wreckage, and then he barreled through them and reduced them to little frozen pieces of ice. Naruto then stopped in the air and saw that all the pieces of wreckage from the satellite were destroyed, and then looked down at the Metropolis train station and saw the roof was destroyed and Clark had Zod in a chokehold. Time slowed down as Naruto saw Zod ready his heat vision to try and kill a family of 3, so Naruto flew down to the train station and landed in front of the family as Zod fired his heat vision. "Arg!" Naruto shouted as he shielded the family from the blasts of heat. "Run!" The family ran for cover as Naruto took the force of the heat vision and began skidding backwards across the floor from the force of the blast. Naruto then looked at Clark, who nodded back. "My father sends his regards," Clark said as he pulled out his Phantom Zone crystal and touched Zod, and he was sent back to the Phantom Zone with no way to leave. Naruto fell to the ground as he felt the sting from that heat vision. Clark walked over and helped Naruto back to his feet as they took a sigh of relief knowing that the threat of Zod was over. "Nicely done." Naruto said as Clark nodded. Yeah, it's over. Clark said as people who were still in the train station walked out and looked at Naruto and Clark. Should we be concerned and leave? Naruto asked as the people began to cheer for them, shouting out thanks and gratitude for saving them. No rush in leaving. Clark said as Naruto smiled. Line break XXXXX 2 weeks had passed after TN in Metropolis and the entire world realized that they weren't the only beings in the galaxy or the most advanced or powerful. The Kryptonian arrival put the governments of the world to try and retrieve any pieces of the alien wreckage or any kind of alien remnants for their own purposes. They also began to refocus their resources onto government programs and sections that dealt with the super-powered or anything alien-related after the reveal of the Kryptonians and the 2 Earth-raised Kryptonians who saved Metropolis. Naruto and Clark were now known to the world as Red Sun and Superman, the Men of Steel. After Zod and his forces were defeated, Naruto spent the entire week afterward using their powers to help clean up and fix Metropolis. They repaired buildings, helped repave the streets, transported people to hospitals and stopped criminals who took advantage of the situation. With Naruto and Clark working together, the entire city was rebuilt in 9 days. The people of Metropolis were grateful and cheering for their heroes, which was only boosted by the awesome article Chloe and Lois wrote and the pictures Jimmy took. There was even talks that they were being nominated for Pulitzers. Even though Naruto and Clark did a lot of good, there were still a majority of people who were afraid of them. There were anti-alien haters that began to speak out against Superman and Red Sun, and many people in law enforcement and the military didn't like the idea of 2 godlike powered people running around without any means to stop them except for their word as good people. One of the military people who had experience with Red Sun and Superman, General Swanwick, was driving in the desert near a satellite communication station and on their way back to a military base with Captain Ferris driving. It was a simple and quiet drive as they made their way back to the base when all of a sudden, a Predator drone was sent crashing down to the road. Ferris saw this and swerved the car to a stop as they saw the puff of smoke and sand from the Predator wreckage. They got out of the car and walked forward as the smoke and sand dissipated and they saw Red Sun standing amidst the wreckage of the drone. He stood there with a slight smile and his arms crossed. "Are you being stupid?" Swanwick shouted. "It's one of your surveillance drones," Red Sun said. "That's a $12 million piece of hardware," Swanwick shouted. "It was. And they'll keep piling up if you and the military keep trying to track me and Superman. So stop," Red Sun said. "Then I'll ask the obvious question. How do we know you won't one day act against America's interest?" Swanwick asked. "I grew up in Kansas, General. That's about as American as it gets," Red Sun said as Swanwick sighed. "Look, Superman and I are here to help, but it has to be on our own terms. And you have to convince Washington of that." "Even if I were willing to try, what makes you think they'd listen?" Swanwick asked. "I don't know, General. Guess I'll just have to trust you," Red Sun said as he turned around and flew away. Swanwick sighed as he turned around to see Captain Ferris with a smile on her face. "What are you smiling about, Captain?" Swanwick asked. "Nothing, sir. I just think he's kind of hot," Ferris said with a smile as Swanwick nodded. "Get in the car, Captain," Swanwick said. "Yes, sir," Ferris said as they got in the car and left. Back in Smallville, Naruto, Clark, Martha, Chloe, Lois and Jimmy were at the Smallville cemetery as Naruto, Clark and their mom wanted to visit Jonathan's grave. In light of everything that happened, they wanted to pay him a visit. Naruto and Clark walked up to their father's grave with their mother and laid down some flowers. "He always believed you boys were meant for greater things. And that when the day came, your shoulders would be able to bear the weight," Martha said. "Yeah. I just wish he could have been here to see it finally happen," Clark said as they looked down at their father's tombstone. "He saw it, Clark. Believe me, even when you boys didn't see it in yourselves, he saw it," Martha said as Naruto and Clark smiled. "So, what are you boys gonna do when you're not out there saving the world? Have you given any thought to that?" "I think that's more of a question for Clark, Mom," Naruto said. "I have, actually. I've actually got a job interview," Clark said. "Really, where?" Naruto asked as they walked back to Chloe, Lois and Jimmy. "The Daily Planet," Chloe said. "Yeah, Chloe and I were able to talk to Perry and grease the wheels a bit. And we also submitted some of the articles you wrote back for the Torch. Perry was pretty impressed." Lois said as Clark walked up to her and smiled. He looped his arm around her waist as she hugged him and he kissed her head. It'll be nice to have you at the planet, Jimmy said. Yeah, and it'll be the perfect place to keep my ear to the ground. A place where people won't look twice and I can be informed of everything that happens, Clark said. It'll keep you busy. We'll just keep perfecting your appearance so people won't mistake Clark Kent for Superman, Lois said. I guess that means Metropolis gets Superman. So what about you, Naruto? You sticking around here too? Chloe asked as Naruto smiled. As much as I would like to, I think Metropolis is set with just one of us. Besides, there are a lot of other cities out there and the entire world will need our help from now on. I go where my job sends me, Naruto said. Cell phone ringing. Naruto took his phone out of his pocket and saw it was his boss. Oh, speak of the devil. Excuse me, Naruto said as he answered his phone. Yes. Uh-huh. Yes, sir. Oh, well thank you sir. Yes, sir. Sure. I don't mind. Uh-huh. Wait, how much of a raise? Okay. When do you want me to move? Okay. I'll get ready. Thanks. Yes, sir. I'll keep you updated, Naruto said as he hung up. What was that about? Chloe asked. That was my boss. He's been impressed with my work over the last few years that he promoted me to supervisor of the books division, Naruto said as everyone smiled. Wow, congratulations, Chloe said as she and Martha hugged him. So what does that mean? Martha asked. It means I've got a lot more work. My boss wants me to supervise the Starling City branch as head supervisor. I'm basically in charge, Naruto said as they smiled. Nice, Jimmy said. I guess that means you're heading to Starling City, Lois said. Yup, I'm leaving in a few days. I'll head there, find a place to live and get to work, Naruto said. I wonder how the vigilante of Starling City will take to having Red Sun in his city, Chloe said. I'm sure it'll be fine. What's the worst that can happen? Naruto asked. Naruto was in his seat on the plane heading from Metropolis to Starling City. Naruto had packed his bags and was moving to Starling for his new job as the supervisor for the book division of the Starling City branch. He did stay in Smallville for a bit to celebrate New Year's but then left afterward for his job. He packed some clothes and other personal items as he managed to find a small apartment for himself and all the furniture would be there when he arrived. Naruto landed in Starling City and then left for his apartment. It was small with one bedroom, a kitchen, living room and a bathroom. He walked in to see the furniture he ordered had arrived but they hadn't set it up. Oh, come on, Naruto said as he picked up the bill from the moving company and saw that assembly was separate and would cost a couple $100. Naruto balled up the bill and threw it away and then super sped around the apartment and quickly put everything together. He put his clothes in his dresser, made his bed, put together his table and desk, moved his couch and cleaned everything up. It was all finished in the span of 2 minutes. Ah, home sweet home, Naruto said as he sat down on his couch and relaxed. He then grabbed his pack with his computer and his paperwork and left his apartment to get some lunch before he went to work to check in. Luckily, there was a Big Belly Burger in Starling City. After that, Hang Company's Starling City location and met with the people there. Now that he was the supervisor of the book division, he had a lot more work to do and people to supervise. He also had to report to the other head supervisors in the publishing company. Naruto then began some paperwork he had to do with the upcoming books the company was going to publish. It dealt with the projected timetable of the releasing books, all the other accompanying benefits and payment methods, the stores the books would be distributed to, possible book tours, and the copyright and ownerships of the books. Which was actually what Naruto was dealing with when he left his office. He grabbed his pack and the copyright papers that the author and the publishing company had filled out and they were going to submit them to the patent agency, but Naruto also had to go to the DA's office to look at the previous copyright infringement cases the publication company had to deal with. The DA's office also had records that would help the publishing company with the paperwork they needed. Naruto's boss had called the DA's office and told him to talk to Laurel Lance. She would help him with anything he needed. Naruto walked into the federal building and saw that it was a fairly slow day. Naruto walked up to the front desk and took out his wallet. Hi, I'm Naruto Kent. My boss called earlier about the paperwork we needed, Naruto said to the receptionist. Yes. May I see ID, please? She asked as Naruto showed her his driver's license. Thank you. Go up 2 floors and Ms. Lance will be there. Thank you. Naruto said as he walked to the staircase. He walked up 2 floors and entered the main office floors to see the city officials and people who worked for the DA's office at work. He walked around and saw a desk with the nameplate Dinah Laurel Lance. Naruto looked at her and froze for a second. She was beautiful. She had amazing hazelnut eyes, beautiful brown hair, and there was something about her that made Naruto freeze. Naruto had dated before and he had girlfriends, but nothing that was ever too serious or that lasted longer than a few months. The longest was 1.5 years, but he called it off in the end. Being an alien and having to keep your past and your powers a secret was tough, but she was gorgeous. Naruto then realized he hadn't moved for 3 minutes, so he quickly cleared his throat and walked up to her desk. Excuse me, Laurel Lance? Naruto asked as Laurel looked up and saw Naruto. She was chewing on a pen cap as she looked over some paperwork when she heard someone. She looked up and saw a gorgeous man her age standing in front of her. He had perfect blonde spiky hair, a chiseled face, and amazing blue eyes. She blushed and realized she was chewing a pen, so she quickly took the pen out of her mouth and put it down. Yes. Laurel responded. Hi, I'm Naruto Kent. I work for the Random House Books Publishing Company. My boss called earlier about the paperwork I need. Naruto said as Laurel nodded. Her boss told her about someone coming for publishing-related paperwork. Yes. They told me you were coming. Sorry, I've just been a little busy, Laurel said as she got up from her seat. It's no problem. I'd imagine it must get pretty busy around here, Naruto said as Laurel grabbed her the files she needed and the key to the file storage room. Actually, it's been fairly quiet, which is unusual for Starling City, Laurel said as she led him from the offices to get the files. So how long have you been in Ada? Naruto asked. Oh, I'm not the Ada. Adam Donner is the Ada, but I've worked at the DA's office for about 9 months, Laurel said. How long have you worked for Random House Publishing? A few years now. I actually got promoted recently, Naruto said. Oh, congratulations, Laurel said. Thank you. I got the promotion and a lot more work to do, Naruto joked as Laurel chuckled. Oh, here we are, Laurel said as she unlocked the door to the massive file room where there were rows and rows of file cabinets. Here it is. Wow. That's a lot of files, Naruto said as he grabbed a cart. Yeah, Laurel replied. Which ones do I need? Naruto asked. Laurel said as she opened her file. The files are located between files COVALENTC1P001 to CZ300. Naruto found the file cabinets and saw it was an entire row of file cabinets. Okay, this could take a while, Naruto said as he put his pack down and quickly began to sort through the files he needed with Laurel's help. 3 hours had passed as Naruto and Laurel managed to get all the files they needed, which was a lot. Because there were so many, Naruto called his work and some interns and file clerks would come over to pick up the files and bring them back to the building. Naruto closed the last file cabinet and looked at the clock and saw it was 7:30. Geez, it's been that long. Laurel, I'm so sorry that it took so long to get all the files, Naruto said. If Laurel wasn't present, he could have used his super speed and could have finished it in under a minute, but she said that she would feel bad if she left Naruto to do all that work. That's all right. I'm sure it would have taken twice as long if you were alone, Laurel said as Naruto chuckled. Still, I'm so sorry about this. I feel really bad about this. You have to let me make this up to you, Naruto said as Laurel chuckled. It's all right, Naruto. Really, it's fine, Laurel replied. Please, I took up 3 hours of your time doing my job. The least I can do is buy you dinner to pay you back, Naruto said as Laurel looked at him. Laurel was about to respond, but then her stomach growled as Naruto chuckled a bit. Seems like it's time for dinner anyway. All right, Laurel said as they finished up with the files and walked out of the municipal building. So, know any good places to eat? Naruto asked as he put on his jacket. Yeah, actually there's Mario's down the block. Best pizza in Starling City, Laurel said as Naruto smiled. Had me at pizza, Naruto said as they walked down to the pizza place. They ordered a mushroom and olive pizza and sat down and enjoyed their dinner. Laurel and Naruto engaged in a casual conversation as they enjoyed their pizza. Naruto told her a little about his work and Laurel told him about how she used to work for CNRI before she worked for the DA's office. It was just a regular conversation, nothing that two coworkers or friends wouldn't talk about. They ended up at dinner for about 2 hours and both were enjoying themselves when Laurel noted the time. "Well, Naruto, thanks again for dinner, but I need to get home. I got an early day tomorrow," Laurel said as she and Naruto stood up and grabbed their things. "No problem. And it was the least I could do after your help today. And I now know a good place to get pizza," Naruto said with a chuckle as Laurel smiled. "Well, good luck with all the paperwork you probably have to go through," Laurel said. "Yeah, that'll be a fun couple of days. But something tells me that if the company's new line of books is any indicator, then I'll probably be stopping by again with more paperwork," Naruto said as Laurel chuckled and pulled out one of her business cards. She took out a pen and wrote down something on it. "Well, here. You can reach me here. If there are any questions or more paperwork you need help with, give my office a call," Laurel said as Naruto nodded and Laurel left. When she left, Naruto looked at the card and saw it was actually a business card from Ada Adam Donner's office and that Laurel was listed as his counsel. She had her number circled in a black pen so Naruto knew who to call. "Okay. First night in a new city and I met a nice girl. Go Naruto," Naruto said as he left the pizza place and returned to his apartment. He relaxed and got some water as he turned on his computer and watched some Netflix before bed. Naruto was in the middle of watching an episode of CSI when his super hearing picked up something. Down on the ground, Naruto heard a robbery across town. "Time to go to work," Naruto said as he super sped and quickly changed into his costume and flew into the sky above Starling City. Naruto flew through the sky and made his way to the robbery being committed at a convenience store. He saw 3 gangbangers holding up the store owner so Naruto quickly flew down in a blur and knocked the 3 gangbangers down, broke their guns and tied them up with a bent metal piece of a roof gutter. The store owner called the police as he saw the gangbangers had been knocked out. Naruto then flew into the air through the city, waiting for his super hearing to pick up anything else. Throughout the night, Naruto stopped 12 muggings, 4 attempted rapes, a high-speed car chase, 7 different shootings and 3 other attempted robberies. Naruto smiled as he helped a lot of people tonight and the police were grateful that these crimes were stopped, but the lingering question was by who, and the arrow also wondered who was doing his job. Line break XXXXX. It had been a week since Naruto moved to Starling City and he kept himself busy with work and helping the city. With his powers, he was able to do his work in a fraction of the time it would normally take so he could go help the people of Starling City and the world. His super hearing picked up a lot of other crimes in nearby cities and Chloe kept him up to date on anything international from the planet. Right now it was Friday and Naruto had finished his work so he was just relaxing in his office and waiting until dinner. He managed to get a reservation at an awesome restaurant in Starling called Table Salt. Naruto was on his computer, checking any global news for any incidents and just saw the same old news of governments around the world wanting to meet Superman and Red Sun or about the US government's control of some of the alien wreckage in Metropolis. Naruto then looked at his wallet and opened it to see the card that Laurel gave him. Maybe he should ask her on a date. Naruto picked up his phone and dialed the number. The phone rang for a bit before it was picked up. "Hello, DA's office, Dinah. Laurel Lance speaking," Laurel said as she answered the phone. "Hey, Laurel. It's Naruto Kent," Naruto said. "Hi, so how was all the paperwork you had to sort through?" Laurel asked. "Well, that was one afternoon of my life that I'll never get back," Naruto said as Laurel raised an eyebrow. "An afternoon? I thought all of that paperwork would take at least a few days," Laurel said as Naruto cleared his throat. "Yeah, you think it would. But, I had a lot of the interns help me sort through it so it didn't take as long," Naruto said as he covered his tracks. "Oh, wow. Lucky you. So, did you need some more paperwork or are you sending in some paperwork for us to go over?" Laurel joked as Naruto chuckled. No paperwork. At least, not yet. I was actually calling because I wanted to know if you would like to have dinner tonight?" Naruto asked. "Dinner?" Laurel asked. "Yeah. I know it's kind of last minute, but if you're free, I have reservations at Table Salt tonight at 7:30 and I was wondering if you would like to have dinner with me?" Naruto asked as he heard Laurel shuffle a bit over the line. Okay. I'll see you at dinner then. 7:30. Bye, Naruto," Laurel said. Bye, Laurel. Naruto said as they hung up. Okay, note to self. Watch the excuses. Naruto got his stuff, cleaned up his office and super sped back to his apartment. Naruto took a shower and got cleaned up to get ready for his date tonight. Naruto was in his kitchen getting a drink of water when his phone rang. He picked it up to see it was Clark. Hey, Clark. What's up? Naruto asked. Hey, I'm just checking in. How's Starling City? Clark asked. Not bad. Granted, the city has probably seen better days, but it's not bad. Work keeps me busy enough, and saving this city is a bit of a full-time job, not to mention with all the international incidents Chloe's been keeping me up to date with. Naruto said as he poured himself a cup of water. Believe me, I get it. Metropolis has no shortage of bad guys who have been cropping up lately, especially since we beat General Zod. Have you been watching the news about us lately? Clark asked. Don't remind me. Let's just be on our best behavior. So how has it been at the planet? Naruto asked. Not bad. I'm working with Chloe and Lois mostly for now. We've been writing a few stories here and there on what happened, and Lois has been writing a lot on Superman's adventures in Metropolis. Chloe and Jimmy got Pulitzers for the article and photos, Clark said. Yeah, I saw. I called them before to congratulate them, Naruto said. Well, not everyone liked what they wrote or how they feel about us, Clark said. Yeah, but you can't expect everyone to like us at first. Once they get to know us, it won't matter, Naruto said. Yeah, say that to Lex Luthor, Clark said. Lex Luthor? Head of LexCorp? Naruto asked. Or actually Luthor Corp as it's more commonly known. He's been making it very clear in his public interviews that he does not like us at all. He blamed us for the city attack, the invasion, and he's been turning people against us, Clark said. Well, we can't exactly do anything. He has the right to express how he feels. Come on, Clark. Just like when we were younger, we can't let him get to us. That's exactly what he wants, Naruto said. Right. Anyway, enough of my complaining. So what are you up? Clark asked. Nothing right now. I'm just getting ready for dinner, Naruto said. Oh, you have a work dinner tonight? Clark asked. Not a work thing. I actually have a date tonight, Naruto said. Really? Clark asked. Don't be so surprised. I've had dates in the past, Naruto said. All right. With who? Clark asked. Her name's Laurel Lance. She works with the Ada here in the city. She helped me with some paperwork for my job, Naruto said. Huh. Okay. Have a good time. Oh, by the way, did Chloe ask you to come into the city tomorrow? Clark asked. Yeah. She was kind of vague about it. Do you know why? Naruto asked. No idea. She just told me that she wanted to see us this weekend. She said it was important, Clark said. I wonder what it is. All right, Clark, I got to go. I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto said. See you, Naruto. Clark said as he hung up. Naruto put his phone down and finished his drink of water and saw it was nearly time for his dinner reservation, so he quickly put on his dress shirt and sports jacket and then super sped out of his apartment and to the restaurant. He super sped through the city to the restaurant and managed to get there a bit early and arrived in the alley next to the restaurant. He walked out onto the street and fixed his shirt and stood in front of the restaurant as he waited for Laurel. He waited for 5 minutes when a silver Toyota Corolla rolled up the restaurant and the valet walked over. Laurel walked out of the car and smiled as the valet gave her a ticket. Laurel was wearing a beautiful black dress and high heels. She grabbed her purse and walked over to Naruto, who she thought looked very handsome. Wow, you look amazing, Naruto said with a smile as Laurel smiled back. Thank you. And you look very handsome, Laurel said as they walked over to the door and Naruto opened it as she walked in. They walked in to see the restaurant in the midst of its dinner hours and was fairly busy. Table Salts was one of the nicest and fanciest restaurants in the city, so everyone in the restaurant was in dress clothes. Wow, I don't think I've ever been here. I'm glad. That'll make tonight special. Come on, Naruto said as they walked over to the hostess desk. Good evening. Welcome to Table Salts. Do you have a reservation? The hostess asked. Yes. It's under Kent. Naruto said. Yes, I see it here, Mr. Kent. Your table is ready. Please follow me, the hostess said as she grabbed 2 menus and led them to their table. Naruto and Laurel took their seats as their hostess handed them their menus. Here are your menus, your waiter will be with you shortly. Enjoy your evening. Thank you. Naruto said as they opened their menus and their waiter came by. Hello. Welcome to Table Salts. My name is our waiter tonight. May I start you off with some drinks? If you would like wine, we have a very nice Merlot I believe you will enjoy, the waiter asked. Yes, that sounds fine. And some water too. Naruto said as the waiter nodded and left. Naruto then turned to Laurel and smiled. I hope the bottle of wine was okay. Yeah, sounds great. Laurel replied. Oh, good. I'd be kind of embarrassed if you didn't. Naruto said with a chuckle as Laurel chuckled. This place is amazing. How did you get a reservation here? Laurel asked. Well, it's one of the bonuses for working at the publishing company for so long. My boss has some connections and managed to get me a reservation here. Granted, I'll probably have to step up at work for the next couple of months, but I think it'll be worth it. Naruto said as Laurel smirked. Only time will tell. Laurel said as she took a sip of water. The waiter brought over the bottle and showed it to them. Here is the Merlot, he said as he opened the bottle and poured a little bit into each of their wine glasses. They swished it around and took a little sip and it was perfect. It's perfect. Laurel said. Yes, thank you. Naruto said as the waiter poured them their 2 glasses. Are you ready to order? The waiter asked. I am. I'll have the tuna crudo and the roasted chicken. Laurel said as she handed her menu to the waiter. I'll have the shrimp bisque and the duck confit please. Naruto said as the waiter took his order. I'll get them out to you both. Enjoy your evening. The waiter said as he left and Naruto picked up his glass and took a sip of wine. You know, I was kind of surprised that you asked me out on a date, Laurel said as Naruto chuckled. Yeah, I kind of surprised myself. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed our dinner before and that mountain of file sorting. Granted, not exactly a great first impression but an impression nonetheless. Naruto joked as Laurel chuckled. I'll definitely say it was one of my memorable encounters that led to a date, Laurel joked back. I'm glad. To be honest, I haven't been on dates in a long time so I guess I'm a little rusty. Naruto said as Laurel chuckled, seeing how nervous he was. It was cute. Well, you're off to a good start, Laurel said as Naruto smiled. So, how are you liking Starling City so far? I guessed from our first meeting you were new. So far it's been interesting. It's only been a few days so far. But it's not that different from Metropolis or Central City. Naruto said as he took a sip of wine. Oh, so you're from Metropolis? Laurel asked. No, actually. But I've been there a lot. My brother and some friends work for the Daily Planet though. I don't suppose you've heard of Lois Lane, Chloe Sullivan and James Olsen? Naruto asked as Laurel looked at him. She knew those names, probably everyone in the country now knew those names. Of course. They're the reporters that covered the alien invasion from Metropolis. I've read that paper probably a dozen times. They won Pulitzers for that article, Laurel said as Naruto nodded. Yup. Although, Jimmy was a photographer before he was promoted to photojournalist, Naruto said. How do you know them? Laurel asked. Well, my brother and I have known Chloe since we were kids. She's our best friend and believe me, she's had the blood of a reporter since she was 5. Lois is Chloe's cousin and we met Jimmy when we graduated college. He was interning at the Planet. Naruto said as Laurel smiled. Wow. You know some pretty famous people, Laurel said. Well, I'm not the only one. You know Oliver Queen, billionaire playboy and CEO, so we're kind of even. Naruto said as Laurel looked at him. How did you know that? Laurel asked. Oliver Queen is on Chloe's cheat list along with Bruce Wayne and George Clooney. She showed me an article from when he went missing 6 years ago and I saw it had a picture with you in it. Naruto said as he saw Laurel seemed a bit uncomfortable with it. Sorry, that wasn't appropriate for a first date. Not a good impression. No, it's fine. I'm past that, Laurel said as their appetizers had come. Again, sorry. Okay, no more talk about that now, Naruto said as Laurel chuckled seeing him flustered and nervous. They ate their meals and enjoyed some more conversation as Naruto did his best to avoid anything that could bring up bad memories. They talked about their work and Laurel asked him about the alien invasion in Metropolis. Naruto told her that he along with Clark, Lois, Chloe and Jimmy were in the city when the attack happened and he told her a little about the aliens and Superman and Red Sun. Then the conversation moved to their interests, some of their funniest memories, where they went to school and their families, although that part was kept very brief for both of them. It had been about 3 hours as Naruto and Laurel were both having a great time. They had just finished their desserts and were enjoying some desert wine as they were one of the last remaining couples in the restaurant nearing closing time. They were both laughing from a story that Naruto was telling about a prank he pulled off in middle school. So wait, you actually stole your neighbor's truck and took it for a joyride through your town? Laurel asked as Naruto chuckled. Yes, but in my defense I had just seen Fast and Furious and my dad wouldn't let me borrow the pickup. And it's not my fault he left his keys in the truck. Naruto replied as Laurel chuckled. Oh my god. You must have been in so much trouble for that. Now was this before or after you paint-bombed City Hall? Laurel asked as Naruto thought. That was before actually. That combined with the joyride put me into serious hot water with my parents. It's not every day parents answer the door to see the sheriff with their child in handcuffs. Naruto said as Laurel looked at him. He put you in handcuffs? Laurel asked. Yes, but in his defense that was the second time I caused that much trouble that required every single police car to chase me. Naruto said as Laurel laughed. So what did your parents do? Laurel asked. Well, I was grounded for a year and driven to school by police car to make sure I would behave. And there was the detention and community service. It was after that incident that my parents told me to get a hobby. Naruto said as Laurel chuckled. Why? Laurel asked. Because the sheriff would have arrested me the next time I did something like that. And that's how I got into writing and that's pretty much my job now. Naruto said as Laurel smiled. Wow. I've had my fair share of childhood rebellion but you take the crown. Laurel joked as Naruto chuckled. Well, in my town, you needed to find ways to keep you busy, and working on my dad's farm was great but you needed some excitement every now and then. Naruto said as Laurel looked at him. What do you mean? Laurel asked. I'm sorry, Naruto replied. You said your dad's farm, not your farm, Laurel said as Naruto chuckled. You picked that up, didn't you? Naruto said. Yeah, the farm's been in my father's family for probably 100 years. My brother and I were adopted. Oh, sorry, I didn't know, Laurel said as Naruto nodded. No, it's fine. My parents were great and I'm practically a Kent in all but blood, but that didn't matter to them. Naruto said as Laurel smiled. Well, I think that's the end of that question, Laurel said. It's fine, Laurel. If you have a question, go ahead, Naruto said as Laurel smiled. No, I think that's enough questions for one night. Besides, it's getting late and I think that it'll cost us extra to keep the restaurant open this late. Laurel said as they looked around and saw that some of the workers were cleaning up. Right. Come on, Naruto said as they grabbed their stuff and Naruto left a tip on the table. They left the restaurant as the valet went to pick up Laurel's car. Well, Laurel, I had a great time tonight. So did I didn't think I could have this much fun in a long time, Laurel said as Naruto smiled. Well, I'm glad that I could make this a memorable first date, Naruto said as Laurel smiled. She then quickly texted something and sent it. Naruto picked up his phone to see he got Laurel's cell number. Now you can reach me from my phone instead of at the office. For the next time we go out, Laurel said as Naruto smiled. Oh, so there will be a next time? Naruto asked as Laurel chuckled. Well, I'd be more than up to a next time, but I think that's also up to you, Laurel said as Naruto smirked. Well, I would very much like to go out with you again, Naruto said as Laurel smiled. The valet then returned with Laurel's car and stopped next to them. Your car, Ms. Lance, the valet said as he walked over and handed her the keys. Well, thanks again for the date, Naruto, Laurel said as Naruto smiled. It was my pleasure, Naruto said as they hugged goodbye and Laurel kissed his cheek. Good night, Laurel said as she got in her car and drove away. Good night, Naruto said as he watched her drive away. Naruto then walked down the street and was heading home when his super hearing picked up the sound of some gangbangers attempting a robbery. Back to work, Naruto said as he ran into an alley, changed into his costume and super sped through the city to stop the robbery. It was just another night for Red Sun. Line break XXXXX. Naruto stayed out for a few more hours after his date ended with Laurel to keep the city safe. He then got some sleep and rest for his trip back to Metropolis in the morning. Naruto woke up at 11 a.m., took a shower and grabbed a quick snack before he super sped to Metropolis, stopping in the alley behind the Daily Planet at about 11:30. Naruto walked into the building and made his way up to meet with Clark, Chloe, Lois and Jimmy. Naruto walked through the reporting floor to see that it was kind of busy. Apparently, Lex Luthor was making some kind of weapon demonstration at the LexCorp building and it might score him a $1 billion government contract. Naruto made his way to Clark's desk, which was right across from Lois's desk. He walked over to see Clark was at his desk and typing on his computer. He was wearing a white button-up and tie with his jacket on his chair. He saw that Clark's hair was combed and neat and he had his glasses on, the meek Clark Kent. "I see you've gotten comfortable here," Naruto said as Clark turned and smiled. "Well, it wasn't that big of a change. Just like back at the Torch," Clark said as he hugged his brother. "Good to see you. You look good." "Well, I had a great time last night so I feel great," Naruto said as Clark smiled. "Oh, really? Nice to see you back out there, Naruto," Naruto heard as Lois walked over. "Hey, Lois," Naruto said as they hugged and he kissed her cheek. "Smallville told me you had a date last night. I think it's great you're getting back out there," Lois said. "Well, she's really great and we had a good time. Where's Chloe?" Naruto asked. "She's coming over with Jimmy. They're in a meeting with Perry," Lois said. "We still have no idea what she wants to tell us," Clark said. "You think it has to do with the press conference Luthor is holding?" Naruto asked. "It's possible. I've heard some whispers that this new weapon could be something that the government could use in the event of another invasion like with Zod. Luthor hasn't exactly kept his feelings about aliens a secret in the past few weeks," Lois said. "Nope, not about that," they heard as they saw Chloe and Jimmy walk up to them. "So, what's this about?" Naruto asked. "Come on, follow me," Chloe said as they followed Chloe to one of the private meeting rooms that the reporters often used when Perry called meetings to talk about headlines. They walked in as Chloe locked the door and activated her computer and set it up with the projector. "I'm glad you guys came. This was something that was best talked about in person." "What's going on, Chloe?" Naruto asked. "I'm not sure but my gut tells me it's nothing good. About a week after you guys put Zod back in the Phantom Zone, Perry and a lot of the other media outlets all over the country looked into the global effects of the attack. I saw that one of our reporters had found something that I think you guys will want to see," Chloe said as she brought up some images and put them in slideshow mode. The images were of a large crater followed by two craters in Smallville and scenes of death and destruction. "Oh my God," Jimmy said as they looked at the pictures. "It's like your fight with Zod, but that was in Metropolis and Smallville," Lois said as they looked at the pictures. "After Zod was sent back to the Phantom Zone and the world went back to normal, there have been numerous reports and sighting of the weird and supernatural all over the world. It's like the wall of weird went global. The worst was in small village in the Kashmir region of India. The entire village was decimated," Chloe said as she brought up the images and it looked like the village was in the middle of a war. "Do you think some of Zod's soldiers had left the ship and went on a killing spree?" Clark asked. "I don't think so. Whatever the survivors reported didn't sound like a Kryptonian," Chloe said. "So the question remains, what could have happened?" Jimmy said. "Do the local authorities have any idea what happened?" Lois asked. "Nothing concrete, but one of these bizarre incidents occurred in Alaska and eyewitnesses say that prior to the strange events, there was a shooting star in the sky about 9 weeks ago," Chloe said as Naruto realized something. "Wait, that was the same time that Clark and I escaped from the Phantom Zone and stopped Zod," Naruto said as Clark looked at him. "Do you think there was a chance that something followed you guys?" Jimmy asked. "We're not sure. Aside from the bright flash of light, I didn't see anything when we escaped from the zone," Clark said as Naruto nodded. "But we need to be sure. Have you been able to track any of them, Chloe?" Naruto asked. "Barely. The only thing I've been able to dig up were some poorly taken photos of the destruction and one picture of a crater," Chloe said as she brought it up. "That looks like the craters made from the meteor shower in Smallville," Lois said. "And like the ones we made when we escaped. We need to find more," Clark said as Chloe nodded. "I've been trying, but I think our best bet would be satellite images," Chloe said. "I thought the satellites went down during the attack?" Jimmy asked. All government and a few privately owned ones, but a few remained active. The satellites owned by Queen Consolidated, Wayne Enterprises and Star Labs were the only ones that were still online during Zod's attack. If we can get access codes to those satellites, then we might be able to piece together what happened that day, Chloe said. Well, none of us have access to those satellites. We'll have to come up with something, Naruto said as when his super hearing picked up the sound of someone coming. Someone's coming. Chloe turned off her computer and shut the projector off as someone walked in and the group acted like normal. So I'm thinking we all grab a cab and head back to Smallville for dinner this weekend, Clark said as the group acted like it was normal conversation when the door opened and Perry walked in. Kent, Lane, Sullivan, I want you three to head to the LexCorp building for the demonstration that Luther is giving. I want a statement from Luther. There will be military leaders there as well. I want comments and statements. Olsen, I'll need pictures. Get to it, Perry said. Right away, Mr. White. We'll leave lickety-split, Clark said as he fixed his glasses while Perry just looked at him and left. Lickety-split? Really? Naruto asked. It's part of disguise. Naruto, want to come along? Clark asked. Sure, why not? Naruto said as they left for the LexCorp building. Naruto, Clark, Lois, Chloe and Jimmy were in front of the LexCorp building where a large podium and screens were set up for the presentation along with a large box covered by a tarp. There are a lot of people in the crowd ranging from other reporters, people in Lex's security team, board members or shareholders and other high-ranking member invited while the rest of the crowd was bystanders. On the podium, there were chairs for high-ranking military officers that were invited to the demonstration and would also discuss the possibility of a contract. Naruto was in the crowd watching and looking around as Clark got a quote from one of the engineers who worked on the project and Chloe and Lois were interviewing a general that knew Lois's father. Jimmy was taking pictures when a woman stepped up to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome you to this demonstration. At this time, I would turn your view to the monitors to witness our special presentation on the long-awaited debut of the new advancement in military defense, the Lexosuit 5000. The presenter spoke as the screens showed a large bipedal robot with 2 giant cannons on one arm and 4 miniguns on the other. The screens then showed the Lexosuit going through training exercises and easily taking down cardboard cutouts of soldiers and unmanned drones. Constructed from a patented alloy, the Lexosuit is virtually indestructible. As seen in this test footage against automated tanks, the Lexosuit stands up to heavy punishment and returns it in kind. The presenter said as the Lexosuit took 12 tank rockets and emerged without a scratch, then fired only 1 rocket to destroy a tank. Guiding this suit is a single soldier, made more powerful than an entire battalion. And now, here's to the future. The presenter said as the tarp was removed to show a working model of the Lexosuit on stage. And the man who created it, Lex Luthor. 1. Lex stepped forward as everyone cheered and photographers took pictures. Luthor took in and absorbed all the adulation and applause. Naruto clapped a bit when his super hearing picked up something closing in. It sounded like heavy trucks speeding towards the LexCorp tower and the sound of helicopters closing in. Clark heard this too and handed his pad to Lois. Excuse me, Lois, Clark said as he and Naruto left the crowd and made their way to someplace secluded where they could change. Chloe, Jimmy and Lois saw this and began to move someplace with some cover. Luthor quieted the crowd as he approached the podium. Thank you. I view the Lexosuit not as an instrument of war but as an instrument of security, so that our nation and our planet will be safe in the future. Luthor said when all of a sudden, 4 heavy armored vehicles broke through the fence surrounding the LexCorp building and plaza and smashed through parked vehicles and security checkpoints. The 4 armored vehicles stopped near the front of the building and turned around. The doors to the vehicles opened up and 20 men dressed in black combat gear got out in military formation. They were armed with automatic rifles, light machine guns and grenade launchers. The tops of the armored vehicles opened up to reveal hatches where 4 men stood up and brought out miniguns. The group then began shooting at the building and in the air, causing the crowd to scatter and run in fear. The men opened fire and killed any security guard or police officer that tried to shoot them. The remaining security guards and officers that weren't immediately mowed down took cover as bullets flew all over the place. Then 2 armored attack choppers followed by a Harrier chopper descended near the plaza. The Harrier chopper hovered above the Lexosuit before releasing several grapple hooks and chains. 5 men broke off from their task of keeping the police away and used the grapple line and chains to hook the Lexo suit up to the chopper. The chopper then reeled in the Lexo suit and then took off with the other choppers, firing a barrage of missiles near the tower to keep people away while the Harrier chopper got some distance. The barrage of missiles compromised one of the towers in the LexCorp Plaza, causing it to collapse. Lois, Jimmy and Chloe ran when they saw Superman and Red Sun fly into the plaza and stop the tower from falling onto the crowd. Superman held it up and moved it back into place while Red Sun flew to a nearby construction site, got some steel beams and fixed one of the broken support columns. He propped the metal beams up and then used his heat vision to weld them into place. Red Sun then quickly turned to see the choppers in the distance and the armored vehicles leaving with the last one about to leave. The mini gunner on the last armored vehicle saw Red Sun, so he took aim at the crowd to distract him. He fired his minigun as Red Sun quickly flew and appeared in front of the crowd and took the blunt of the minigun fire, which broke or bounced off his skin. Superman then flew down and smashed into the armored vehicle and knocked it over, causing it and the 5 men who were in the van to fall out. The men scrambled to their feet, loaded their guns and fired at Superman and Red Sun, but the bullets just bounced off. Superman and Red Sun then walked forward, pushed them lightly, which actually pushed them through the air and knocked them against the armored vehicle. Red Sun picked up their guns and snapped them in half. One of the men pulled out his sidearm and emptied his entire clip, but it did nothing. Red Sun then super sped forward and grabbed the men. If the bigger bullets and the minigun did nothing, why did you think the smaller one would? Red Sun asked as he broke the pistol and knocked the man out by tapping him on the head. Superman and Red Sun then tied up the 5 men by using vehicle door and wrapped it around them. You take the ground and I'll take the sky, Superman said as Red Sun nodded. On it, Red Sun said as he flew to the city while Superman flew into the air. Red Sun flew through the city and used his supervision to track down the armored vehicles that were getting away. He found them going down Main Street and flew after them. The vehicles sped up and the miniguns fired in the air to kill Red Sun, but the bullets were useless. Red Sun used his heat vision and blew out the tires of the vehicles, caused them to either flip or skid to a stop. Then in a blur of red and black, the armored vehicles were disabled, the guns were destroyed and the men were tied up and secured. Now you all can wait here for the police, Red Sun said before he flew into the air to go check on Superman. He flew through the air and saw the 2 armored attack choppers had been disabled and placed on rooftops of buildings, but a rogue missile had flown through the air and hit the engine of a flying commercial airliner. The airliner then took a dive as the blown engine caused a system malfunction and it couldn't sustain flight. Red Sun then flew with Superman as the 2 saw the airliner descending rapidly and was on a crash course for Metropolis. They flew in the air to stop the plane as Superman got to the front and tried to slow it down while Red Sun flew to the engine and used his freeze breath to put out the fire and prevent a gas explosion. Red Sun then flew to the other wing and grabbed it as his hands made cracks and dents in the steel. He slowly began to bend the wing so the plane would turn in the air and avoid any buildings while Superman slowed the plane down but had to make sure he didn't exert too much force or he would smash right through the airplane. The airplane then got within the limits of Metropolis, so Red Sun flew underneath the airplane and lifted it up to avoid the plane from smashing into a building. They then kept pushing as the plane slowly began to slow down as they reached the outskirts of Metropolis and managed to set it down safely. Phew. That was heavy, Superman said as Red Sun walked out from underneath the airplane and opened the airplane door, causing the emergency slide to inflate. Bystanders and the people in the plane cheered and applauded for Superman and Red Sun, who then flew away as the police and paramedics arrived. Line break XXXXX. Naruto and Clark returned to the planet to check up on Chloe, Lois and Jimmy and see if they had any leads on who attacked the demonstration and stole Luthor's war suit. They saw the floor was in a frenzy, most likely trying to get a spec on as possible about Red Sun and Superman's acts of heroism and Red Sun's return to Metropolis. Clark looked around but didn't see Lois or Chloe. Perry, where's Lois and Chloe? Clark asked Perry. Relax, Kent. I sent them over to get a statement from Luthor after his demonstration. They should be back soon. And I want your passage on my desk by 9, Perry said. Yes, Mr. White, Clark said as Perry nodded and left. He seems nice, Naruto said. Perry's nice once you get to know him, and he's a great boss, Clark said as he saw Lois and Chloe arrived. There they are. Smallville's, nice save, Lois said. Yeah, but the thieves outsmarted us. We'd protect people so they could make their escape. But how did they get 4 armored vehicles and 3 choppers into Metropolis airspace? Naruto asked. I don't know, but something seems a bit fishy about this whole thing. We went to interview Luther and he did seem kind of angry about what happened to his suit, but something doesn't feel right, Chloe said as they saw Jimmy arrive. Guys, I got something you'll want to see, Jimmy said as they moved to one of the meeting rooms to talk privately. What did you find, Jimmy? Clark asked. Some interesting things. During the attack, I kept my camera taking pictures automatically, and when I went to review them I found something interesting. The attack on the demonstration was obviously to take Luther's battlesuit, but I don't think it was a theft. I think Luther wanted it stolen, Jimmy said. Why? Lois asked as Jimmy brought up one photo before the attack that looked like Jimmy had snooped in on a private conversation of Luther's. I noticed Luther made himself very scarce before the presentation, which is odd since he usually likes to showboat, and I found something. Look at who he's talking to. Look familiar? Jimmy asked as they saw Luther talking to some guy in a business suit. Who is he? Naruto asked. Here, maybe you'll recognize him here. This was taken at last year's International Industrial Conference. Recognize the guy in with the medals? Jimmy asked as the picture was of Luther shaking hands and smiling with some man in a military suit with a lot of foreign medals and flag, with the guy in the business suit next to him. Wait, that's the reagent of Kaznia, Lois said as Jimmy nodded. The US and Kaznia haven't been on the best of terms in the past decade. The regent has been employing a unique team of mercenaries to do his bidding and take out his political opponents. Their signature was 4 armored vehicles and 2 choppers, like the ones we saw today, Jimmy said. But the president broke diplomatic ties with Kaznia years ago, Naruto said as Chloe began to piece it together. That's right. So any Kaznian official would be detained on site, but this mercenary group isn't official Kaznian forces. But how did they get so close and why? Chloe asked. Maybe Luther wanted to sell his suit. Think about it. A suit with that kind of firepower would go for billions on the black market, and I'm sure Kaznia would pay a lot for something that could turn the tides in any conflict, Naruto said. So Luther hid the selling of his suit and made it look like an abduction. This way there's a greater chance of hiding the sale if it looks like a robbery, and I'm sure Luther was more than able to grease a few hands to get the mercenaries into the city. And Luther couldn't sell his suit to them without it being an act of treason, Lois said. Hence the robbery. And Luther seemed to slip away with calm and ease when the attack began. If he was innocent, he'd be a lot more freaked out if someone stole his billion-dollar battlesuit, Jimmy said. Nicely done, Jimmy, Naruto said as Jimmy smiled. Yeah, but it's a theory. We'll need to prove it, Lois said as they all tried to figure out how to prove it. Why don't you guys just fly over the city and use your X-ray vision? Chloe asked. I did that before we came back. I tried to find the chopper, but I couldn't, so either they left for somewhere out of the city limits or the suit must in some place that's lead-lined, Naruto said. And we might not have enough time. They could move the suit before we find it, Clark said as Chloe got an idea. If Luther helped organize this then he'd want a way for the mercenaries to get in and out of the city and country quickly and with a way to avoid any complications. The problem is, Luther practically owns the entire city, so there could be dozens of ways he could move the suit, Lois said. Not anymore. After the airliner was shot down, I'm sure that the ATC wouldn't let another plane enter or leave Metropolis airspace for a while, Naruto said. And with the gear and equipment, the mercenaries would be here a few days early to prepare and plan escape routes, Lois said. Well, let's narrow that down, Clark said as they got to work to try and find where the suit could be. The group went into the listing and paperwork of every single warehouse, dockhouse and harbor storage to try and track down the mercenaries and locate where the suit could be. Naruto was there to help sift through the mountain of paperwork they were looking through to try and find a lead, while Clark quickly finished the passage for Perry for the paper. They kept looking when Naruto noticed something in one of the old photos that Lois had done on a smuggling story that dealt with the Metropolis docks about 2 weeks ago. Naruto saw something, so he focused his vision, and underneath the LexCorp logo on the tanker was the residual red and black from a Kaznian flag logo. Lois, do you have any contacts down at the docks? Naruto asked. Yeah, Bibo, he's one of the dock union representatives, Lois said. Call him and ask him about the tanker in this photo, Naruto said as Lois grabbed the photo and called Bibo. Hey, Bebo. I'm calling you regarding a new story I'm working on. Remember that large tanker we saw with the LexCorp logo? Has it been moving any cargo or anything? Lois asked. Nothing. Nothing on or off, and they won't let any of the dock workers help. It's leaving now. Naruto, Clark B. Wish, Chloe was cut off when Naruto and Clark super sped away. Careful. Thanks, Bebo. Lois said as she hung up. Come on, Smallville's about to break a huge story for us. Lois, Chloe and Jimmy left for the docks while Naruto and Clark had changed and were flying to the docks to locate the tanker. They flew in the air and saw the tanker making its way out of the harbor via tugboat. Red Sun used his X-ray vision and saw people walking around the deck of the ship, but they weren't sailors or dock workers. Dock workers don't carry around guns and have an armory on the ship. He focused his vision and saw one part of the ship's bowels that his X-ray vision couldn't penetrate. That's it, Red Sun said as he and Superman flew down to stop the tanker. The men on the ship saw Red Sun and Superman closing in, so they pulled out their guns and began shooting. Red Sun and Superman landed on the deck of the ship as the bullets kept flying, but they did nothing. Red Sun and Superman super sped around and took out the men on the deck of the ship. The mercenary group leader, John Corbin, was in the captain's room and saw Superman and Red Sun arrive, so he decided to kill them himself with the help of Luthor's suit. Time to take the suit for a test drive. Hold him off, Corbin shouted as he ran below deck. Red Sun walked along the deck of the ship while the mercenaries kept shooting at him. Red Sun super sped forward, grabbed 3 mercenaries and tossed them into the water and threw a life donut as well. Superman then secured some mercenaries using a metal railing. Red Sun made his way to the door of the inside of the ship when the captain stepped out, armed with an RPG. Red Sun, take this. The captain shouted as he fired the RPG, and it hit Red Sun and exploded in a flash of smoke and fire. The captain smirked, thinking he killed Red Sun, but that was immediately dashed when Red Sun stepped out of the cloud of smoke and fire and appeared completely fine. Was that it? Red Sun skied out his gun and fired, but Red Sun super sped forward, covered the barrel with his hand, and the gun exploded in the captain's hand. Arg! The captain shouted as he held his hand. Red Sun grabbed him and pulled him up. Don't worry, the police can help you with that, Red Sun said as he tapped him on the head and knocked him out. Red Sun and Superman then smashed through the cargo ramp hatch and floated down into the cargo hold of the ship and saw dozens of boxes and cargo containers. They landed in the cargo hold and looked for the suit of armor. I don't see it, Superman said. It's right here, they heard a voice from a speaker say before they were both hit by 2 large, powerful rockets and knocked into a cargo container. They pulled themselves out of the broken and bent cargo container to see Luthor's Lexo suit walk towards them. Greetings, aliens. My name is John Corbin and I will be your executioner today, Corbin said as he took aim and fired a volley of high-powered rockets at the Kryptonians, who got hit and knocked out of the cargo hold, through the air and into the harbor. Corbin smiled as he activated the suit's thrusters and flew out of the cargo hold and landed in the Metropolis docks. He then pressed the radio and set it to a communication frequency. It's Corbin. Tell the Regent his war suit is coming to him via special delivery, Corbin said as he saw the water of Metropolis harbor rush like something was swimming towards him. Corbin activated his miniguns as the 4 guns fired large, 50 caliber bullets that would shred a nuclear-hardened tank to confetti. Corbin kept firing when all of a sudden he felt his suit stagger like something had landed on the head, and it was Red Sun. Before Red Sun could punch through the suit, Corbin flipped a switch and a powerful electrical current flowed all over the suit, stopping Red Sun. Corbin then shook him off and punched him in the air with one of the war suit's arms. He then fired his miniguns and the rockets and knocked Red Sun through the air and into an anchored tanker. But Corbin was so focused on Red Sun that it gave Superman the chance to fly out of the water and punch the suit and knocked it through 2 warehouses and into the street. Superman flew after the suit, followed by Red Sun as it was stopped near a construction site. Corbin maneuvered the suit back onto its legs, but Red Sun flew forward and landed a punch to the suit and knocked it back. Red Sun landed another punch and the suit skid back to the construction site. Red Sun flew forward to land another punch, but Corbin swung one of the arms down and smacked Red Sun into the dirt. He then slammed his arm down again and knocked Red Sun into the ground when Superman tackled the robot through the construction site, taking down the building that was being constructed. Red Sun got up and spit some dirt out of his mouth when he saw the building begin to swerve, so he grabbed some spare metal beams and fixed the metal supports to keep the building from collapsing. Red Sun turned to see Corbin firing his miniguns at Superman, who picked up a cement truck and hurled at the suit, causing an explosion. Red Sun saw the explosion destroy some cars and the power lines. Red Sun saw broken power lines fall on a minivan filled with a family, so he quickly flew down and grabbed the power lines. He cracked the lines and stopped the excess electricity flow. "Go get to safety," Red Sun said as the father nodded and drove away. Red Sun turned to see the war suit get back up after the cement truck explosion, and it was still fine and functional. Corbin grabbed Superman and threw him into a police car. He then squished Superman and the car together and threw it down the street before firing 2 rockets and blowing them both up. Red Sun flew down the street and punched the suit down the street. He then jumped on it and punched through the metal plating on the left arm socket and tore the robot arm off. Red Sun then picked up the suit and tossed it away as Superman grabbed the suit and threw it in the air. As the suit flew up, Red Sun flew up and then slammed it back down to the street. With all that punishment, the armor plating began to crack and bend and the wiring of the suit began to malfunction. Corbin tried to take aim with his remaining arm, but Superman flew forward and ripped it off. He then used the arm like a baseball bat and smashed one of the legs off. Red Sun then flew forward, reeled his fist back and then threw out a solid punch that smashed straight through the chest of the suit and to the other side. Red Sun grabbed some of the wires and power cords and then ripped it out. "Want to go a few rounds without the suit?" Superman said as Corbin shook his head. "No, good." The remains of the suit, Corbin and his mercenaries were taken into custody by the police. Corbin and his mercenaries had warrants from countries all over the world, so they would be in protective custody at Stryker's Island until the US government and European governments decided who would prosecute them for their laundry list of crimes. The remains of the suit were taken by the US government to be used for the trial. This fight and capture made an awesome news day, and the Daily Planet managed to sell out papers the next day. The only person who wasn't happy was Lex Luthor. He was in his private office in LexCorp Tower in a meeting with the broker for the Regent of Casnia over the failed transaction for the war suit. The broker showed an online copy of the Daily Planet that read Superman and Red Sun capture terrorists, with a picture of Red Sun and Superman on the cover, written by Chloe Sullivan and pictures by James Olsen. "As you can see, since the agreed-upon merchandise never left Metropolis, my client the Regent respectfully requests an full and prompt refund," the broker said as Lex just stared at him. "We had an understanding. All I had to do was arrange for the Regent's men to take possession, and they did. And now, because of the aliens' interference, you expect me to eat $1 billion?" Lex shouted as he slammed his hand on his desk. The broker looked behind Lex and grabbed his briefcase. "I think you have more pressing concerns at the moment. Good day," the broker said as he got up and left. Luthor turned around to see Superman and Red Sun floating outside his window view of Metropolis. Both were glaring at him. Luthor pressed a button on his desk and the windows opened up. I'm afraid we already have a window washer," Lex said as they didn't say anything. "Oh, the silent treatment. Well, I don't know what you thought you heard out there, but I know what you can prove, and it's nothing." Luthor got out of his seat and walked forward. "You see, aliens. I own Metropolis. My technology built it. My will keeps it going, and 2/3 of its people work for me whether they know it or not. Even you must admit, it's a model of efficiency, and yet, I've often thought, why limit myself to just one city? Beings with your abilities could prove very useful to me on a, shall we say, global scale. Why don't you float on it and we'll discuss it?" Luthor said as Superman and Red Sun didn't move. Luthor began to get angry that they wouldn't answer him, so he grabbed his metal paperweight. "Say something," Luthor shouted as he threw the paperweight at them, but Red Sun grabbed it with one hand and crushed it into pebbles. "The day we work with a sociopathic, ego-driven madman is the day the world stops turning," Red Sun said as Luthor glared at them. "I control everything in this town, aliens. Your cooperation is not really necessary. The offer was merely a courtesy," Luthor said as Superman and Red Sun glared at them. "We'll never work for you, Luthor," Superman said. "That's got to hurt your huge ego, Luthor. You may control this city, but you never will control us. We'll be keeping an eye on you," Red Sun said as he and Superman flew away while Luthor shouted and cursed at them. "Then you'll be destroyed," Luther said as he glared at them. Line break XXXXX Naruto returned to Starling City Sunday night after his and Clark's confrontation. Goodbye to Chloe, Lois and Jimmy. Chloe said she would continue looking into the craters and the strings of death and destruction that follow and hopefully come up with something. Naruto returned to Starling City to quickly finish the paperwork for the next day and decided to call Laurel and ask her to lunch tomorrow. The work week continued normal with Naruto going to work during the day and occasionally have lunch dates with Laurel or dinner dates at night. When Naruto didn't have dinner plans with Laurel, he did patrols of Starling or the world. Some of his most recent global exploits included the saving of garment worker from a factory fire in Mexico, which he also put out, an earthquake in China, and the rescue of a cargo ship near the North Atlantic. He even stopped near the Middle East and stopped an ambush against a U.S. Marine unit near the desert of Iran and saved an Israeli patrol unit from a firefight, saving over 4 dozen American and Israeli lives and stopping the terrorists. That and a bunch of other global saves and incidents took place within a week, and it gave the media outlets and world leaders a lot of ammunition to use to discuss Superman and Red Sun. It had been 2 weeks since Naruto had been to Metropolis, and his and Superman's fight with Corbin combined with all the global incidents sparked a lot of newscasts and media coverage over Superman and Red Sun's authority to act and if they should. It was Tuesday and Naruto was at his job, having just finished some paperwork. He got up to deliver the paperwork to HR and go see Laurel for their lunch date when he saw his coworkers huddled around one of the TVs, watching some of the news coverage and discussions about Superman and Red Sun. We, as a population on this planet, have been looking for a savior. 90% of people believe in a higher power. Every religion believes in some kind of messianic figure. And when this savior character actually comes to Earth, we want to make him abide by our rules. We have to understand that this is a paradigm shift. We need to start thinking beyond politics. Are there any moral constraints on these aliens? We have international law. On this Earth, every act is a political act. Human beings have a horrible track record of following great people with power down paths that led to horrible human atrocities. We have always created icons in our own image. What we've done is project ourselves onto them. The fact is that maybe they're not some kind of devil or Jesus characters, but maybe they're just people trying to do the right thing. We're talking about a being whose very existence challenges our own sense of priority in the universe. If you go back to Copernicus, where you restored the sun as the center of the known universe, displacing Earth, and then you get to Darwinian evolution, and you find out that we're not special on this Earth. We're just one among other lifeforms. And now we learn that we're not even special in the entire universe because of beings like Superman and Red Sun. There they are, aliens among us. We're not alone. Naruto watched as the news changed to an interview with Senator June Finch from Kentucky, who's been one of the most vocal people to speak out against Superman and Red Sun from engaging in their high-level acts and judgment. Is it really surprising that the most powerful men in the world should be a figure of controversy? To have these individuals engaging in state-level events should give us all pause. We have levels of action of checks and balances so that the best act of any kind of situation can be enacted, and here are these men who disregard those rules entirely. Are you comfortable saying to a grieving parent, Superman could have saved your child, but on principle, we did not want him to act? I'm not saying they shouldn't act. I'm saying that they shouldn't act unilaterally. What are we talking about here then? Must there be men like this? There shouldn't, but there are. Click. Naruto's co-workers turned to see that Naruto had turned off the TV with the remote. Come on, Naruto. What, don't like the news? One of them asked. I like the news, but I know you guys are behind on your work. Come on, Naruto said as they got back to work, and Naruto looked at the TV one more time before he left. Naruto walked out of his building to go meet up with Laurel for lunch. Speaking of Laurel, she was at her desk working on some of the files for the Joshua Brown trial. The Ada was heading tomorrow. She was just about finished and put the files together when she saw her dad walk in. Hey, sweetie, Lance said as she got up and kissed him on the cheek, and he kissed back. Hey, Dad. What brings you down here? Did you need something? Laurel asked. No, well, I just finished a patrol and I was in the neighborhood, so I thought we could grab lunch, Lance said as Laurel smiled as she logged off her computer and grabbed her purse and jacket. Oh, Dad. I'd love to, but I actually already have lunch plans, Laurel said as Lance smiled. Really? With who? Some coworkers, Lance asked. Actually, for your information, it's a lunch date, Laurel said. Really? Lance asked as Laurel put her jacket on. Hey, Laurel. Lance heard and turned to see a tall, handsome, spiky blonde man walk up to them. Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting something? No, it's fine. I'm ready. Dad, this is Naruto Kent. Naruto, this is my father, Quentin Lance. Laurel said as Lance smiled and Naruto smiled back. Quentin, nice to meet you, Lance said as he shook Naruto's hand, who firmly shook back. The pleasure's mine, Officer Lance. Laurel's told me a lot about you, Naruto said as Lance looked at Laurel. Really, because she's never mentioned you, Lance said. That's because we've only been dating for 2 weeks, Laurel said as Naruto and Lance chuckled. I don't think I've seen you around Starling before, Lance said. I'm new, actually. I moved to Starling about a month ago for work. That's how I actually met Laurel, Naruto said as Lance smiled. Really? Lance asked. Yeah, the publishing company I worked for needed paperwork and Laurel helped me out, Naruto said as Laurel grabbed her things. Okay. I'm ready. I'll see you later, Dad, Laurel said as she kissed him goodbye. It was a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Lance, Naruto said as he shook his hand goodbye. Yeah, Lance said as Laurel and Naruto left for their lunch date. They went to Torres for sushi and talked about their days, and Laurel said that she was invited to a campaign party that was being hosted by Oliver Queen. It was for Alderman Blood, who was running for mayor and was being held at Verdant. Blood invited Laurel and she wanted to know if Naruto wanted to come, and he said yes. As someone who would be living in Starling for a while, it would be a good idea to get to know more people and someone who might be mayor. Naruto said he would pick up Laurel from work when he got off. Naruto just had to finish off some more paperwork and coordinate some new book deals going out, but after that he went to pick up Laurel. Laurel was at her desk, finishing up her work for the day, when Ada Donner walked over. Hey, summon me here for a drink? You look dressed for it, Donner said. No, actually. I called you here to tell you that I'm heading out early. I have a date, Laurel said as Donner nodded. Oh, lucky. So, what are you working on? Donner asked. Just finished up the paperwork for the Joshua Burns trial. Now, just some stuff for my own curiosity, Laurel said as she smiled and grabbed her jacket. Laurel, ready? Donner heard as he turned to see someone walk up. Yeah. Naruto, this is Ada Adam Donner. Adam, this is Naruto Kent, Laurel said as Naruto shook Adam's hand. Nice to meet you, Naruto said as Adam nodded. Likewise. So, where are you guys heading? Donner asked. The campaign rally for Sebastian Blood. I'll see you tomorrow, Adam, Laurel said as she and Naruto left. Naruto and Laurel took a cab to Verdant, where Oliver Queen was hosting the campaign party for Sebastian Blood. Naruto and Laurel mingled with the crowd for a bit, with Laurel known people she knew. Then Oliver Queen stood up on the platform to address everyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming here today. For the past year, our fair city has undergone a crucible. A good friend once told me that a crucible shows the strength and resolve any one person can have to overcome it. Our city may have gone through a lot, but we have shown our strength. And Sebastian Blood has pulled us together to show that we are stronger together. He has done so much for our city and he can do more. He is the man we need to see in the mayor's office. So, please, join me in our efforts to send Starling's favorite son there. To Sebastian Blood, Sebastian for Starling, Oliver said as everyone clapped. He then stepped down as Sebastian stepped forward. Thank you, Oliver. And not just for your support, but also for your friendship, Sebastian said as Oliver nodded. And thank all of you for coming. You know, when Oliver calls me a son of Starling City, it feels like the literal truth. I was a street orphan, and this city raised me as one of its own. I am the man that I am today because of my Starling City family. So, it's time that I start to give back. So, thank you all for your support. Everyone clapped and applauded as Sebastian walked off the podium and shook the hands of people and thanked them for coming. Laurel smiled as Sebastian walked over to her and hugged her as she hugged back. Laurel, glad you could make it, Sebastian said. Glad I got the invite. That was a good speech, Laurel said. I just spoke from the heart, Sebastian said as Naruto walked over with 2 glasses of champagne. Oh, who's your friend? Oh, Sebastian, this is Naruto Kent. Naruto, this is Sebastian Blood, Laurel said as Naruto smiled and shook Sebastian's hand. It's nice to meet, Sebastian said as Naruto smiled. The pleasure's mine. That was a great speech, Naruto said as Sebastian nodded. Thank you. I plan to do my best for this city and I hope I can count on your vote, Sebastian said as Naruto nodded. Well, I may have just gotten to this city but I can say that you have it, Naruto said as Sebastian smiled. Oliver took a sip of champagne as he watched Sebastian talking to Laurel and some guy she was with. Nice speech, Ollie. Who knew you cared so much about politics? Thea asked. Well, I care about the city, and Sebastian is a friend, Oliver said as Thea nodded. He's got to be a good friend, Thea said as Oliver chuckled. Cute. So, how's Roy? Oliver asked. Handsome, brooding, usual. Why is my boyfriend such a topic of interest? Thea asked. Well, Thea, his idol put an arrow in him, and I just wanted to make sure there weren't any lingering issues, Oliver said as Thea realized something. Oh, my God. Now that I think about it, you know, he did something completely out of character this morning, Thea said. What? Oliver asked. He showed up for work on time, Thea joked as Oliver chuckled. Cute. Oliver replied as their mother came over. Thea, oh, it's just wonderful, Moira said. Proud to do my civic duty, Thea said. No, I'm the one who's proud. You've taken Oliver's hobby and turned it into a successful business, Moira said. Hobby? Oliver asked as Moira and Thea chuckled. Oh, sweetheart, Moira said as she hugged them. Moira then left to go talk to a friend as Thea noticed the guy Laurel was with. Hey, Ollie. How are things with you and Laurel? Thea asked. Fine. Why? Oliver asked. Nothing. I just hope you're not the jealous type. Because Laurel's friend there seems to be very close, Thea said as Oliver looked at Laurel and the tall, blonde guy she was with. The two seemed very comfortable together and Oliver saw that Laurel seemed happy again, like she used to be with Tommy. He even saw the guy kiss Laurel on the head. Thea thought it was cute. Laurel and I are just friends, Thea, Oliver replied. Oh, good. Because he is yummy, Thea said as Oliver looked at her. What? He is gorgeous, tall and handsome. Okay. I don't need to hear any more, Oliver said as Thea chuckled and left to go check how things were going. Sebastian then walked over to thank Oliver. Oliver, thank you so much for your kind words, Sebastian said as he shook Oliver's hand. Oliver smiled and shook back. I'm just speaking the truth, Oliver said as Sebastian smiled. Oh, forgive me, a friend just waked in, Sebastian said as he left to go greet a friend. Oliver saw Laurel and her friend walk over after Laurel saw that Oliver had seen her. Oliver, hi, Laurel said as she and Oliver hugged. Glad you could come, Oliver said as Laurel smiled. Sebastian invited us, Laurel said. Us? Oliver asked as Laurel nodded. Oliver, this is Naruto Kent. Naruto, this is Oliver Queen, Laurel said as Naruto shook Oliver's hand. Nice to meet you, Naruto said as Oliver nodded. Nice to meet you, too, Oliver said as he looked at Naruto. Wow, you're taller in person, Naruto said as Oliver chuckled. Excuse me? Oliver asked as Laurel chuckled. Sorry, it's just that my friend, Chloe, used to talk about you a lot in college. She kind of had a massive crush on you when you kept making the tabloids. Naruto joked as Laurel and Oliver chuckled. Well, I'm proud to say that those days are behind me, Oliver said. I heard. Congratulations on being CEO. Must have been big shoes to fill, Naruto said as Oliver nodded. It's not as hard as you would think. Plus, I have some good friends that help me, Oliver said. So, what do you do? Well, I worked for the Random House Publishing Company. I was recently relocated to Starling City. It's how I actually met Laurel, Naruto said as Oliver smiled. Naruto, do you think you could get me another glass of champagne? Laurel asked. Sure thing. I'll let you two catch up, Naruto said as he left. Laurel and Oliver smiled as they saw Naruto walk to the bar. He's nice. How long have you two been a thing? Oliver asked. 2 weeks. Although, I'm not sure what to call us yet, Laurel said. Oh. What's holding you back? Oliver asked. Just how my last 2 relationships ended. I'm not sure how this would end up, Laurel said as Oliver smiled. Well, I can't speak for you but I think that you'll never know until you try, Oliver said as he could tell there was something else holding her back. Is there something else? Naruto and I have been getting to know each other for 2 weeks now and he's been really open with me. But sometimes, I feel like I don't know the real Naruto. He reminds me a little of you that way. Laurel said as Oliver chuckled. Well, I think that if you want this to work, then you should do what we never did, Oliver said. And what's that? Laurel asked. Talk to him. If Naruto wants this work, and from what I saw he does, then talking to him is the best thing to do, Oliver said as Laurel smiled. Thanks, Oliver. Laurel said. All I want for you is to be happy. It's what I've always wanted. Oliver said as he pats her on the shoulder. And if he hurts you, I'll kill him. Laurel looked at Oliver as he walked away. She turned around to see Naruto walk to her with 2 glasses of champagne. Naruto and Laurel enjoyed the night and mingled with some other people there when Naruto's super hearing picked up an explosion in the distance. 5 seconds later, everyone in the club felt the rumble as they wondered what the hell happened. What is an earthquake or a bomb? Some police officers arrived to tell them what happened, to protect Alderman Blood and to instruct everyone to be safe. Naruto, we should. Laurel turned to Naruto and saw he was gone. She looked around to see where he was and saw his champagne glass on top of a napkin with some writing on it. She grabbed it and it read, have to go check something out, friend called. It's urgent, call you later, Naruto. Naruto had snuck out to the back of the club, ran down an alley and ripped open his shirt to reveal his suit underneath. He took off his normal clothes, activated the disguise changer for his face and hair and flew into the air to downtown where one of the main banks of Starling City was on fire. Naruto used his XNED the building. None of the structural supports were compromised. The bomb had been placed so that the main floors where the money and bank information was held. The police and fire department showed up and began taking care of the fires, so Naruto kept looking to see if there was anyone trapped in the building. He looked through the 9th floor and saw 2 people being escorted out of the building by a guy wearing a hood and carrying a bow. So that's the arrow. Red Sun said as he saw that there was another person trapped on the 10th floor, so he flew to the 10th floor, smashed through a broken window and stopped over the female banker who was trapped under a table. He stopped over her to prevent a falling piece of the roof to fall on her. It's okay. I got you. Red Sun said as he knelt and moved the table off her. He then scooped her up into her arms and flew out of the building as the roof came down. Red Sun flew out of the building and floated down to the ground as the paramedics came up to the buildings with a stretcher. Red Sun put the woman down on the stretcher as the paramedics looked her over. Thank you. The woman said as Red Sun smiled. Just doing my job. Red Sun said with a smile as he flew up into the air and looked at the burning building. He then clapped his hands together with enough force to create a huge gust of wind that put out the fire. Red Sun looked at the crowd before flying away. On the rooftop of the building across from the bomb explosion, Oliver Queen or the Arrow looked at Red Sun as he flew away. Line break XXXXX. The next morning, the police were on high alert after the bombing and were doing their best to try and track down the person responsible. There was a lead in the morning as a 300-page manifesto of anti-government hate was published by the bomber. His identity was still unknown. At Queen Consolidated, Oliver Queen entered his office after a long night on patrol. He walked in as Diggle finished reading the manifesto that was published. You okay? Long night? Diggle asked. Yeah. News report said the bomber didn't steal any money, Oliver said. I think this guy just wants to make a statement. That went online an hour ago. Diggle said as he handed Oliver his tablet. His manifesto. 300 pages of anti-government hate. You think this psych is any way connected to our psycho in the skull mask? Exhales. This guy has a completely separate agenda. He's a lone wolf, but we need to find before he finds his next target. Oliver said as Diggle nodded. I'd start with the bomb. Everyone's unique. Maybe we can get some kind of signature on the guy. But the bomb residue is with SCPD, Diggle said. Fortunately, we have an in with one of the officers at the department. They heard as they saw Felicity walk in with a suitcase. I thought you were staying in Central City for a few more days, Oliver said. I got a news alert about the bombing, caught the first train out this morning, Felicity said. Good. We need you here. How's Barry? Oliver asked. He's still sleeping. I prefer sleeping to coma because coma sounds, not fun. I'll reach out to Detective Lance. Felicity said as Oliver nodded. Across town, Naruto was in his office finishing some paperwork and watching the news about the recent bombing. After saving that woman and putting out the fire, he called Laurel and made up a lie saying that a work friend he knew was in that building and he left to go check on him. Luckily, his friend was fine. Naruto spent a good 15 minutes after that apologizing, but Laurel told him it was okay. Naruto finished the last of his paperwork as he saw the police press conference saying that no one was killed but the bomber's identity was still unknown and that people should be careful. Naruto looked at his computer as he watched the press conference and decided to try and stop this guy before he killed anyone. So, Naruto called the best person to help him figure this out. "Hey, Naruto." Chloe answered. "Hey, Chloe. How's it going?" Naruto asked. "Oh, not bad. Although, I'm currently working with Lois on her Intergong piece. Apparently, Bruno Mannheim's been getting some new kinds of weapons. Weapons that aren't standard military," Chloe said as Naruto raised an eyebrow. "You think Luther's been supplying Intergong with weapons in exchange for taking out Clark?" Naruto asked. "Maybe. Luther's been quiet. Nothing too extreme since the war suit incident, but I heard he's been pouring more funding into his tech, science and biotech divisions. Probably to figure out how to kill you and Clark," Chloe said as Naruto took a deep breath. "Well, hopefully he doesn't get that far. I mean, the only thing that could kill us is kryptonite and there can't be that much left on the planet," Naruto said. "I'll keep my contacts on Luther. His ego is as large as his fortune and he won't stand to have two people who can surpass him," Chloe said. "Thanks, Chloe. There's another reason I called you. I need your help. Did you hear about the bombing here in Starling City?" Naruto asked. "Yeah, Perry had a small section of the global incidents page for it. What happened?" Chloe asked. "Well, I'm pretty sure it was a terrorist bombing by an anti-government netcase. Here, I'm sending you the link," Naruto said as sent it via email. "The bomber uploaded that manifesto today. Do you think you could work your computer magic and find out who he is? If that manifesto was any indicator, then he won't stop at one." "Well, you called the right person. I'll work my magic and call you when I get a lead," Chloe said. "You're the best, Chloe. Don't ever forget that," Naruto said. "I know," Chloe said as she hung up. Naruto put his phone down as he saw Laurel walk in with a bag. "Hey, did we have a lunch today?" Naruto asked. "No, I was in the neighborhood. Figured I'd stop by with some," Laurel said as she held up a bag of Tora sushi. "And my favorite." "Awesome, come in," Naruto said as Laurel walked in and sat down at his desk and took out the sushi. "Nice office," Laurel said. "Yeah, the benefits of working for the company for so long. It has its charm, but I don't spend too much time in here. To be honest, I'm busy going to different departments for work," Naruto said as Laurel sat down. "Laurel, again I'm sorry for leaving so suddenly last night. It couldn't be helped." It's fine. Is your friend okay?" Laurel asked. "Yeah, she's fine," Naruto said. "Oh, your friend is a she?" Laurel asked. "Yeah, she works in the finance department. That's why she was at the bank last night. Don't worry, she's just a friend," Naruto said as Laurel nodded, but Naruto could tell that she had something on her mind. "Is there something else?" "Well," Laurel said as she struggled to find the words. Naruto stood up and walked in front of her. "Laurel, if there's something wrong or if you have a question, just ask," Naruto said as Laurel took a breath. "Oliver and I weren't just friends. We actually were a thing a while ago," Laurel said as Naruto nodded. "I know. I could tell last night that you two had something," Naruto said. "Don't worry, we're over. But it was complicated to say the least," Laurel said as she took a breath to steady herself, so Naruto held her hand. "When Oliver got on the boat, I thought that we were planning a future together, but it turns out that he was looking for a way out. He had been seeing my sister, Sarah, and she was on the boat when it went down." "Oh my god. That couldn't have been easy," Naruto said. "That's an understatement. I was so angry for so long at what happened that I couldn't grieve, and when Oliver came back it brought it all back. I managed to move past that and began dating someone who I saw a future with, but it was just as complicated. His name was Tommy Merlin, and he was Oliver's best friend," Laurel said as she took a deep breath. "Before the earthquake that destroyed the Glades, Tommy broke up with me because he thought that I was still in love with Oliver. And in that moment of weakness, I did something I shouldn't have," Laurel said as Naruto nodded. "I betrayed him. Tommy died in the earthquakey about that ever since. It's okay, Laurel, Naruto said as he soothed her. So, I wanted to tell you why I've been going so slow with our relationship. And why I haven't been as open as you would probably like to push our relationship forward, Laurel said as Naruto nodded. That's a lot to take in. You've been through so much, more than most people should have to go through in one life, Naruto said. Yeah, I just wanted to get that off my chest before we go any further, Laurel said. And I'm glad that you felt comfortable enough with me to share that. And now I want you to know that I don't plan on giving up on this relationship. Since you were honest with me, I need to return the favor, Naruto said as he sat down next to her. On our first dinner, I told you that I was adopted, but you never pushed it, so I figured that since you told me about your past, I should tell you about mine. I was adopted when I was 4 by my foster parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, Naruto said. What happened to your birth parents? Laurel asked. They died, a year after I was born, Naruto said. Oh, I'm sorry, Laurel said as Naruto nodded. It's fine. To be honest, the first few years of my life before my brother and I were adopted, I was completely unaware of what had happened. When I was adopted, I thought that they were my birth parents, and it wasn't until I got older that they told me, Naruto said. You mentioned your brother, Clark? Laurel asked. We're not related by blood, but we're brothers. We grew up together and we're a family. It didn't matter to my parents that we weren't their biological children. They loved us as if we were. I never knew anything about my birth parents until high school, Naruto said. What happened? Laurel asked. During high school, my brother and I got in contact with Dr. Virgil Swan, Naruto said. The famous astrologist and billionaire? Laurel asked. Yes. He got in contact with us because he knew our parents. It turns out that my parents and Clark's were very close, practically family. They worked with Dr. Swan and he told us about them, Naruto said. What happened? Laurel asked. There was an accident with an experiment they were doing. They died trying to save people. They were heroes, Naruto said as he took a breath. And that was pretty much my life before college. Going to school, looking after Clark, and finding out who my birth parents were. To be honest, I was scared about finding out who I really was. I had grown up for so long believing in certain things about yourself and who you thought your parents were. When you're faced with the chance to learn the truth, you hesitate. And when you decided to find out the truth, how did you feel afterward? Laurel asked. A mix between glad and nervous, because I knew that my life wasn't going to be the same afterward, Naruto said as Laurel looked at him. Do you have any people in your life that knew your parents? Laurel asked as Naruto shook his head no. No one that knew them personally. Although, I did learn that Clark had a biological cousin, Kara. She's been a new addition to the family. We keep in contact, but she's doing great, Naruto said. So how are your parents? Laurel asked. My mom is fine. She's back in Smallville on the farm. My dad passed away a few years ago, Naruto said. Oh, I'm sorry, Laurel said. How did he pass? Heart attack, Naruto said as he took a deep breath. I'm sorry, Naruto. That couldn't have been easy to share, Laurel said. It's fine. You shared a lot with me and I wanted to do the same. And you can consider that my answer as to where our relationship is going. I'm more than happy to see where this will go, Naruto said as he kissed Laurel and she kissed back. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.